Thank you. And a warm welcome to all of you for joining us today, celebrating the International Translation Day for 2025. Hello, my name is Jeanette Stewart, and I'm the founder of Translation Commons. We are thrilled to host today's celebration of International Translation Day. This marks our fourth consecutive year partnering with UNESCO's Secretariat of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages for this annual celebration. In fact, this is our sixth event overall held in partnership with UNESCO. The overarching theme for today is Indigenous Language Translation, Shaping a Future You Can Trust. We are honored to have experts from various fields sharing the knowledge, and we are grateful for our wonderful volunteer staff producing this event. Thank you all for your time, energy, and thoughtful participation. For those new to our community, Translation Commons is a nonprofit uniting language and technology experts. Our core mission is to bridge the digital divide and ensure digital inclusion for minority and indigenous languages. We work to create digital opportunities so no language and no linguist is left behind, creating free resources, tools, and events like this one through the dedication of our volunteers. Opening today's celebration is Mr. Guilherme Canella, Director for the Division for Digital Inclusion and Policies and Digital Transformation from UNESCO in France.
Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Dear participants, dear colleagues, a warm welcome to this webinar. Thank you for joining today's event in celebration of the International Translation Day, declared in 2017 by United Nations General Assembly to highlight the role of language professionals in connecting nations and fostering peace, understanding, and development. My name is Guilherme Canella. I'm the director here in UNESCO of the Division of Digital Transformation, Digital Policies and Inclusion. And our work on multilingualism as a vital element for the free flow of information is here under my responsibility. I regret not being able to attend today's event live as I'm currently in Manila for the celebration of the International Day of Universal Access to Information. It's quite a nice coincidence, though, that those 2 days are celebrating the same week. No need to explain to you that we can't have universal access to information if we don't properly address the issue of multilingualism and translation. So I'm very happy of this coincidence and being able to co-celebrate these days here in Manila, but also with this webinar. This is the fourth consecutive year that UNESCO is collaborating with Translation Commons to celebrate this International Day, and we couldn't be more grateful for this opportunity. These days is an occasion to reflect on the crucial role of translation in addressing global communication challenges. So I could go deeper here in speaking of the challenges that we have and also opportunities, for example, with artificial intelligence and other technologies, or the challenges we are facing in having better public policies regarding multilingualism in general, and of course the collection with translation. Today, allow me, however, to turn our attention specifically to the issue of indigenous translation, recognizing its unique importance in ensuring that indigenous peoples can fully exercise their rights in their own languages. Translation plays a vital role in ensuring that indigenous language users can access, produce, and share knowledge in their own languages. It is not only a bridge between cultures, it is a tool for empowerment, inclusion, and self-determination. In many cases, translation is what allows indigenous peoples to fully participate in public life, access essential services, and assert their rights in both digital and non-digital spaces. The International Decade of Indigenous Languages was launched in 2022 by the United Nations, and UNESCO has the privilege and the honor of being the lead agency in its coordination. Through this decade and UNESCO's work on multilingualism online, it has resulted in exciting initiatives. The continuous implementation of the 2003 recommendation concerning the promotion and use of multilingualism and universal access to cyberspace, the ongoing development of the global roadmap for multilingualism in the digital era, including, of course, the challenges with artificial intelligence, which our colleague Dr. Waltz will present later. But within those initiatives, this year's theme resonates: shaping a future you can trust. As we continue to build tools, develop guidelines, and establish standards with the best intentions in the world, this work cannot be done without the direct involvement of indigenous communities and without respecting indigenous autonomy in the process. And based on the program of today's event, I have no doubt that the discussions ahead will reflect that commitment. Before closing, I would like to take a moment to highlight the collaborative spirit at the heart of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. Today's webinar, it's a powerful example of that cooperation in action. Civil society organizations like Translation Commons continue to champion the goals of the decade and keep them front and center. And today, we are joined by voices from indigenous communities, academia, and the private sector, all united by a shared commitment to protect, promote, and revitalize indigenous languages. Thank you all for being here, and I wish you an engaging and successful discussions. Thank you very much.
Jeanette, you're muted.
Our next speaker is Ms. Alison Rodriguez, President from 2022 to 2025 of the International Federation of Translators from New Zealand.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you again to Jeanette and the team at Translation Commons for putting together this event to celebrate what is the most important day in the calendar for translators, interpreters, and terminologists, the celebration of International Translation Day. Now, the FIT theme for 2025, Translation Shaping a Future You Can Trust, reinforces the idea that translation as a human act is important in shaping the future, especially in the overwhelming shadow of AI, as trust is being eroded in all areas of life. It also celebrates 2025, the UN Year of Peace and Trust, highlighting the important role of human trust, specifically the role of translators, interpreters, and terminologists in ensuring trustworthy communication and building dialogue and trust between the parties and providing oversight to AI-generated text and machine translation. Now, in its resolution for 2025, the Year of Peace and Trust, the UN General Assembly further recognized the need to prevent and resolve conflict through dialogue and diplomacy. Now, while interpreters in global negotiations may not be visible, we know that such high-stakes conversations could not happen without them, and certainly could not be entrusted to technology. Now, this year's theme also echoes the 2017 UN resolution declaring 30th of September an official UN International Day to be celebrated across the entire UN global network, honoring the contribution of professional translators, interpreters, and terminologists in connecting nations and fostering peace and global development for a future founded on trust. Which leads us to ask the important questions. What does a trustworthy future look like? And who gets to be in part of it? And more importantly, who gets to decide? Now, this is an aspect that we cannot delegate. There are decisions to be made, and it's important to remember that human agency is also a responsibility to make those decisions carefully for the benefit of all. So importantly, you can't be part of those decisions if you can't be part of the discussion. True progress is inclusive in all its senses, and translation is how we create true inclusion, especially for Indigenous languages. Now, translation is a vital tool for accessing and preserving cultural heritage, language, and tradition, especially in today's AI-driven world. Now, I know that I'm not telling you anything new, and we know that mother tongue languages, multiculturalism, and multilingualism are worth defending because language is arguably one of the things that makes us human. It's a vehicle for culture and history, and somehow culture and tradition are often left behind in the race towards technological progress. Paradoxically, progress can be both something that destroys and preserves. And this is where the human agency part of the argument comes in. We need to actively make the right choices to preserve and promote multilingualism and inclusion. And this is why the work of raising all voices equally is important, which is why the work of Translation Commons is important, promoting and supporting access in all languages. Now, recently, I was at the 20th International Conference on Translation, organized by the Malaysian Translators Association and the University of Malaysia in Sarawak in Kuching, where there are no less than 34 Indigenous languages. And we talked at depth about finding the balance between preservation and progress, because that's important. Progress and preservation are part of the past, are often set up as polar opposites. And yet, trusting the future starts with honoring the past. And the key to the future is found in building on the past. Just as our future should include all natural diversity, a trustworthy future must also include all cultural and linguistic diversity, especially Indigenous languages, because Indigenous cultures have so much to teach us about preservation and sustainability, and they need to be included in the discussion and the dialogue. We need the full diversity of human language and input. And this means that the role of translation is an important part in the path to shaping that inclusive future you can trust. And so with that, I would like to wish you all a very happy International Translation Day 2025. Thank you.
Thank you to Alison and Guillermo for their opening remarks, setting the stage. Our first session is moderated by Dr. Jandyala Prabhakar Rao, former professor of linguistics at the University of Hyderabad. Prabhakar?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Janet, for giving me this opportunity. And let me start with the topic of the today's session. The enduring trust in human values, ensuring accuracy and cultural integrity within indigenous communities. So, as all of us know that the indigenous cultures and languages are very important, not only for the individual nations, for the whole world. So I think against this background only, we have today a webinar on translation of indigenous languages. So we know that human values are very much incorporated in indigenous languages and cultures, and it is our duty to identify and highlight those human values for the sake of the humanity. So, with these few words of introduction, I will start. I request Dr. Alain Melby, Chair, International Federation of Translation Standards Committee, USA. So, the topic is why labels on translation output matters. So, please, Alain.
Greetings on International Translation Day. My name is Alan Melby. I'm the chair of the North America region of the International Federation of Translators, commonly called FIT. Today, I would like to talk with you about labels and near misses. Labels on translation output should be used for every language combination, especially when one of them is an indigenous language. The labels are professionally verified translation and unverified translation. If it's not professionally verified, it's unverified. These labels are being standardized around the world, and along with them, instead of translating the labels themselves, we're developing a language independent label logo, and the logo will be used with any language combination. Now, the labels start with the translator when they submit their work. They go through to the requester, and eventually they need to be published and made available to the end user. We're calling the end users the consumers of translation, and we're protecting the consumers by alerting them to the kind of translation they're receiving or reading, consuming, professionally verified or not. Now, how do we get these all the way through? We need the support of the AI safety community. The AI safety community is not yet convinced that translations need labels, and we want their support. So we have spoken with them, and we found that what they want is evidence. Well, let's give them the evidence that they want. We're providing near misses. Now, a near miss is, in risk management, an error that could have caused harm if it had not been caught and corrected before it reached the end user. In translation, this would be an error in automatic translation, which does not reach the end user, the consumer, but it could have if it hadn't been caught by a qualified translator. Now, when can you start attaching labels to your work when you submit it? How about right now? Whether you use automatic translation or not, if you verify that the translation meets the agreed on specifications, you can label it professionally verified translation. If you have questions, you can contact me directly, alan.melby@fit-ift.org on your screen. Now, what about these near misses? How you can submit them? Well, we have a survey page for this. You can either type in the URL on the screen, tranquility.info/risk-survey, or you can point your camera at the screen and get that URL through the QR code. We don't need you to submit every error that you encounter in automatic translation. Just one error per month that would have caused harm if you had not detected it and corrected it. If thousands of translators submit one near miss per month, we'll have plenty of evidence to get the attention of the AI safety community, government regulators, and enhance the image of the profession, showing all these errors that we are catching that could have caused harm. So please, start using the label professionally verified translation on all your translations and submit one near miss per month. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Allen, for your very brief and interesting presentation. And I hope that certainly there will be some questions at the end. We will take up these questions. Thank you very much, Dr. Allen. Now, let us move to Dr. William G. AI Singapore, from Singapore. SCA Lion advancing AI for Southeast Asia linguistic diversity. We know that AI is being used vastly to protect and promote linguistic diversity. And let us listen to Dr. William what he says.
Thank you very much. Allow me to share my screen. Just checking if the screen is shared already. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me, and thanks for spending the time wherever you are to hear the story from Southeast Asia today. So my name is William. I'm from AI Singapore. AI Singapore is a national AI program office of the government of Singapore. And today I will be sharing our key project of building the Sea Lion large language models. It's open large language models for better understanding of Southeast Asia languages and Southeast Asia cultures. You may be wondering, why can't we just use existing LLMs? Why can't we just use ChatGPT? Why can't we just use Gemini? To understand that, we need to examine a little bit more closely our region. Southeast Asia is home to close to 700 million people. We are very diverse in terms of ethnicities, in terms of the value systems. We have varying urban landscapes. We have all the major religions sitting side by side, coexisting and interacting with each other very frequently. In terms of language, we have more or less 1,000 languages. Many of them are still widely spoken by many people. They come from 4 distinct language families, from the Austro-Asiatic Vietnamese to the Sino-Tibetan Burmese spoken in Myanmar. But despite the richness of our region, we are very underrepresented in the world of AI. The data representing our languages, they are very tiny compared to English. And this causes even frontier LLMs to struggle sometimes. They miss the cultural nuances all the way to totally misunderstanding the language. That is the gap that we are trying to close by this project of building the Sea Lion LLM. It stands for Southeast Asian Languages in One Network. Our motto is Sea Lion is built by Southeast Asians for Southeast Asians. Of course, we don't claim to build this exclusively. We are open, but we believe that we need to be a part of it because we know our values the best. The effort is driven by Singapore, at AI Singapore. We position this as a digital public infrastructure development that is open for the benefit of the region. But from day one, we have stated that this is not just for Singapore. This is for the whole of Southeast Asia. So we have invited all our neighbor Southeast Asia nations to co-develop the Sea Lion together with us in an open source manner. So today, the Sea Lion is contributed by almost all Southeast Asian countries. As a matter of practicality, of course, we didn't start by trying to tackle all the 1,000 languages in one go. We prioritize the 12 national languages that we have here. I think this is the right approach, but when we try to apply the solutions that we built on real applications, that's when we encounter that there are some signal that if we stop here, I think we won't accomplish the dream of inclusive AI that we want for our region sufficiently. A couple of signals we gathered. The first signal came from Singapore itself, where we tried to build AI assistant to help migrant domestic workers who are working in Singapore coming from different parts of Southeast Asia. We want to help them navigate their new lives in Singapore, but speaking through an AI in their native tongues. The Philippines, there are many migrant domestic workers in Singapore from the Philippines, so we prioritize the Filipino language. When we shared the concept notes with our Filipino government counterparts, they liked the idea. They thought that this can be scaled to Filipino migrant domestic workers in other countries, not just Singapore. But in their mind, for this to fully reap the benefit, we cannot just support Filipino language. We need to support other indigenous languages spoken by the migrant domestic workers, including Visayan, Ilocano, and others. The second signal we got came from Myanmar. Earlier this year, unfortunately, Myanmar had a very big earthquake. The ASEAN Center of Humanitarian Assistance sent a Southeast Asian contingent to help. And they were using a little bit of AI to help with the translation to Burmese, the national language of Myanmar. But Burmese is only spoken by around 80% of people in Myanmar. Some of the affected region by the earthquake, they speak other languages like Shan or Karen. So these are not supported by AI. And the final signal we got is from Indonesia. This is the largest nation in Southeast Asia with 700 languages, 400 of which will go extinct soon. I think this is not a concern if we look at it from the angle of just communication, because most of Indonesians can speak their national language, Bahasa Indonesia. But the main concern is the dying out of the cultures together with the language. And the cultures are a very important part of their identity. The reality is, for Southeast Asia, indigenous identity, languages, and cultures, they are very much the fabric of reality. So we need to include the development of it in our roadmap as well. So we started small. We actually started to collect cultural data in collaboration with Google Research. We have this project called Project Sea Lion Data. We try to gather data that has heavy cultural signal like the one you see on the screen. And we engage the communities directly by interviewing them. We also work through our partners and through the vendors. We have collected about 20,000 such cultural data that we are going to share for the benefit of the public in the region soon. But to test the value of the cultural data, we performed a simple pilot. We revisited the migrant domestic workers use case again. So we used the cultural data to train an AI. We performed A/B testing two models, one with the cultural data used as training, and then the other one without. Very obviously, the migrant domestic workers partners that we interviewed found that the one trained with the cultural data far better than the other one. One of them remarked that that model spoke to her heart, right? So that validates the need, the importance of including indigenous cultural signals in our data development. Building cultural data is expensive. And for a scale of Southeast Asia, we cannot do this alone. We shouldn't be doing this alone. So we have been investing effort to build open data to serve as a one-stop portal for the discussion, for the collection and contribution of Southeast Asian languages data. We call it the Project Aquarium, which is live in beta mode right now. The Aquarium allows us to map existing Southeast Asian data, and also it allows us to identify some of the gaps in the data that we have. This is very important to minimize redundancy in efforts, especially important for the indigenous communities who would like to contribute data because they don't have much resources at their disposal. So it's still early for the Aquarium, but it has allowed us to unlock some high quality cultural Southeast Asia data as identified as shown on the blue bar on the screen there. And this came from underrepresented communities in Southeast Asia. More importantly, the Aquarium, the development of the platform allows us to think very hard about how can we balance the contribution coming from the indigenous communities in a way that it's not just a one-off contribution, in a way that's protecting their interests and allowing them to benefit from it. So we are currently working with cultural preservation NGOs in Indonesia to use the Aquarium as a sandbox to experiment on various ideas related to responsible AI data development. But today is International Translation Day, so we haven't stopped listening to the ground and figuring out use cases that can benefit from our technologies. And we're happy to say that organically, one of the most popular use cases is related to translation. And at the moment, we are dealing with 3 translation use cases. One is on the humanitarian effort that you heard earlier, but also another use cases of transnational legal document translation within Southeast Asia. And the last one is a use case within Singapore where we want to build a translation platform that can perform translation that preserve the cultural signals between the different ethnicities in Singapore, the Malay, the Tamil, and the Chinese. So we hope in our next meeting, I will be able to share with you some success stories and the importance of bringing in the indigenous cultural signals into the data development for translation use cases. Just to conclude, I think 3 lessons learned in Southeast Asia. When we want to achieve practical AI, languages and cultures are inseparable. And because indigenous language represents the cultures, we need to include it in our roadmap. And I think it is very timely because there's an imminent risk of language and cultural extinction in our region. And if we believe in this and we want to prevent this from happening, in my opinion, the most immediate step is to figure out a balanced framework for both scalable AI development for indigenous culture data, but also at the same time respectful of their identity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. William. I think I should congratulate you for the work that you are doing to protect the diversity in Southeast Asia, number one. And number two, we have traditional educational models for teaching and learning, but we need to develop pedagogical models for migrants. So that the work that you have been doing in that aspect is very much commendable, and I wish you all the success. Thank you.
Sir.
Now let us move to the third speaker, Dr. Walters, Senior Researcher and Director, University of Latvia, Livonian Institute, Latvia. His topic, he will be speaking on speakers of indigenous languages as a resource and beneficiaries. Please, Dr. Walters.
Dear colleagues, dear participants of International Translation Day 2025. With each new technology, the world around us changes. Translation ecosystem changes, way how we use languages change, but one thing remains the same, and that is that every language, no matter how many people speak it, has to thrive in the future, has to have a future on its own, including in digital domains. Today, one of the key documents under development, which focuses on bringing languages into the future digital world, is Global Roadmap for Multilingualism in Digital Era. So this is an initiative created by UNESCO to ensure that every language and every variety is able to have the same experience in the digital world. It is a direct outcome of Language Technology for All conference that was organized earlier this year in Paris, and it looks into efforts that are needed to overcome digital divide between languages in the times of technological leap and in the future. Ensuring equitable digital space for every language is not only something that languages need, but also others, because it's a crucial step, maybe a first step, in tailoring technology to correspond to the needs of every single individual, which actually is the way that the technological world is moving. So current status of this roadmap is that its draft version has passed consultation process, and currently it's undergoing final edits, with finalized roadmap to be announced in fall 2025. That will be followed by creation of the global action plan and localized action plans, creation of which will be announced subsequently, and suggestions from the whole of the consultation process, as well as proceedings from Language Technology for All conference, opinions of member states, and outcomes of a global survey of indigenous languages performed by International Decade of Indigenous Languages, as well as experts, will be included in that global action plan. So I call upon everyone also to look and to contribute once the creation of action plan is open. If we talk about what's in it, in this roadmap, so it is actually covering quite diverse and quite many subjects, but it specifically addresses number of key priority action areas, which are language community involvement, policy advancement, capacity building, research, development and industry, and also public awareness and advocacy, which is very important to getting language issues through. Talks about also number of key stakeholders, which are language communities as a first key element: governments, industry, academia, cultural and research institutions, international organizations, civil society organizations, and activists, is also media, all needing to contribute to the successful bringing of languages into future. But the core of this roadmap and the key to success is involvement of language communities in all stages of technology and the digital domains, from entering the digital domains to the actual development and the deployment of digital instruments and solutions and products. Within that roadmap, kind of a key focus area is community, because and not only because the community is receiver of technological outcomes, but also because it is extremely valuable resource. So if we think about building digital resources and tools, so the most crucial element is data and also knowledge. And most valuable resource regarding that is language proficiency, knowledge about cultural context, just like in translation, because translation is not just saying one word for a different word. It's very much about context, about knowledge, and about contextualization. So language also and language proficiency also helps to unlock knowledge that is hidden behind language doors, accessible only those who are proficient. So if we want to develop culturally sensitive technologies, translation that fits into context, feasible technology and approaches that actually work, having community on board is crucial. I wanted to introduce one approach, just an example of how we deal with community involvement back home in Latvia, at the University of Latvia Livonian Institute. So Livonian is a tiny community with under 20 fluent speakers. Community itself is a little bit bigger. That has lost its land over 80 years ago, and therefore is scattered across the country. It's diverse, disconnected, overexposed to majority. However, it shows strong willingness to preserve and take back the language and identity. For example, every year 50 children attend Livonian summer school. And opportunities for language use and access have been key obstacles to sufficient realization. So at our institute, we have a special focus on the development of digital resources, tools, and platforms that enable, first of all, reconnection of the community, reconnection of language domains, and creating new ones, and offers access to language and knowledge. Since 2022, we've been running what we call informally speaker involvement program, which basically means that we hire at the Institute Livonian speakers who are involved in a number of different tasks connected with Livonian language, and the Livonian language becomes like a part of their daily work. So this is not just that they get thank you for speaking Livonian, but they actually contribute back to the community, and this way also get language as a part of their work. So what do we get out of this? As a research institution and as a cultural institution, so we get a significant Livonian resource, unique one, because there are very small number of proficient Livonian speakers that is used for very many needs. So there is a transliteration, translation of Livonian texts, provision of voice examples for building, for example, a speech synthesis, speech recognition. So we have vocabulary screening, creation of new terminology. They're involved in digitization and description of documentation in Livonian, because if you have a document that is locked in the language, so nobody who is not proficient in Livonian cannot actually understand what's in it. They have been involved in the creation of learning materials and creation also of new content, like for example on social network. So there's a wide range of different tasks, all interconnected with Livonian language. However, this cooperation is mutually beneficial. So what do they get out of it? First of all, they get daily Livonian environment. So they have Livonian as their daily language around, so something that they have been not being able to have for maybe years. Their language proficiency improves. The daily use of Livonian is normalized among community members, and language transmission starts to take place. For example, as a direct outcome of this program is that even there are families who started to use Livonian as their daily communication language because they were used to use that at work. So, and that is something that is also a direct outcome. So that there are those language cells where Livonian is used in daily activities emerged out of that based on tasks that they are assigned to. And of course, last but not least is a digital literacy. So they better understand how the technology is used and developed and what it is good and bad for. To conclude, so this speaker involvement program for us has really significantly boosted developments of digital domains. At the same time, the involvement of speaker community has also led to real and tangible revitalization examples, such as daily use in Livonian, use in Livonian families. Livonian example actually demonstrates that involvement of speaker community can help to unlock the access to the language, to stories and knowledge hidden behind language doors for other community members. And this invitation of involvement may unlock opportunities for languages themselves. Have a great International Translation Day, and please do participate in further process and in promotion and contributing to the development of global roadmap on multilingualism in digital era. Together, we can bring all the languages of the world into the future. Thank you very much, and Tieno. Dear
Thank you, Dr. Walters, for your interesting presentation. I think your roadmap, which includes all stakeholders, and that is actually the need of the hour. Then secondly, that your observation by making speakers of the indigenous languages as resource and also beneficiaries. Normally, we take the indigenous people only as resource persons, as resource, but making them beneficiaries also is a very good observation. And thank you very much for your presentation. Now, all three papers, all three presentations are open for discussion. I request the speakers to check with the messages if they have any, so that you can answer one by one. Now the paper, the presentations are open for discussion. Please. We have 5 minutes time at our disposal.
And Professor, may I raise a very quick question?
Please, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Professor, for giving the floor. I really appreciate all the three excellent presentations. Particularly, I wonder that I mean, in the age of AI, shouldn't be also another strong solution to harness new technology such as AI to help preserve the indigenous languages, as the Dr. William T. from AI Singapore well set out. And also, I'd like to know more about concrete practice. You have mentioned that you have some success stories and good practice from the region of Southeast Asia. I'd really like to have more sharing from you to know exactly how that would work in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shan Hong. Yeah, so can you hear me, by the way? Yeah, so I think, I think to reach out to the indigenous community, our strategy to sort of like keep the whole development open has actually been paying off, right? I think the realization that, actually we are dealing with so many languages, there's no way we alone can do it. Makes us choose that, this open path. Today, as we build the Sea Lion, we actually also encouraged to learn that there are a derived version of the sea lion that's actually being developed by our partners across different Southeast Asia. In Thailand, we have one version of the sea lion that is continued trained to make it work well for Thai. And then in Indonesia, they actually have a version of the sea lion that they not only make it better for Indonesian, but covering even more indigenous languages in Indonesia. And then through that derived version, actually they are closer to the communities, the way Dr. Valls actually engaged the Livonian. So I think the people in Indonesia that's building the variant of it work with the community there to sort of like include their data and also integrate the resulting AI in their workflow to make them a little bit more productive. And I think that's something that is a little bit beyond us because actually it's not directly with us, but in a way we are building a community throughout the region to inspire people to do something similar at their own grassroots.
Thank you, Dr. William. Any questions?
There is a question from the YouTube audience, and it is to all the speakers. As highlighted by the speakers, the involvement of language communities is a core element of ensuring translation remains accurate and culturally appropriate. What concrete steps translation tool developers can undertake to ensure communities are included in every step of the process?
So who would like to take the question?
Valls says, and Alan.
I would absolutely love to take this question. And I would say that the first step is establishing connection. Because that's what in many cases for the communities is that they need to being heard on what they need or how they want these technologies to serve them. And this is beneficial also for those who are developing technology so that they understand issues that they may run into. And this is like communities being listened to and also heard is kind of a first step towards successful implementation of this contextualized translations as well.
Thank you. Any questions? Any comments from the audience?
Alan, yeah.
Well, it's very practical and it's related to labels. If translations are labeled as professionally verified or unverified, then this will raise awareness in the minds of the readers that there is a profession called translator. Translation is a profession. And they'll say, oh, well, I wonder if the community has been involved in the development of this tool, or was it done completely outside of them in just a technology way? Of course, we wouldn't do that, but some people might. We hope not. But let's raise awareness of the difference. We're not saying with labels that technology is good or bad. We're saying that humans and machines are different. And the end user, the consumer, needs to be protected and know what they're consuming. Kurti Vashi, who was on a panel discussion at the World Congress of Translators very recently with me, said over 99% of all the translation produced on a given day is automatic translation that reaches end users with no human involvement. And many users are not aware of this. So labels are one way to raise awareness.
Thank you.
Prabhakar, one more question from the audience to Dr. William Chi. We have ample evidence that bilingualism improves cognitive outcomes in people. Do you know if multilingual training data for LLMs improve LLM capabilities or outcomes?
Nice question, Conrad. Thank you very much. Actually, the answer is a bit mixed. We found evidence that there's a cross-lingual transfer between languages. So in a way, it helps a little bit lifting up the low resource language if there's a related high resource language available in the training data. But at the same time, it can sometimes create a little bit of confusion by the AI. For example, in Southeast Asia, Indonesian and Malay are very similar, but Indonesia is a country of 200 80 million people. Malaysia is, I think, 10 times smaller than that. So what happened is that sometimes the LLM, when prompted in Malay, replies in Indonesian. Similarly with Thai and Lao, in a similar situation, they get mixed up sometimes. So it's a mixed answer, Conrad.
Thank you. Any questions? Any comments from the audience? Okay. If there are no comments, just I want to.
Sorry, I think there are one question on the chat.
Oh, yeah, yes, please. Yes, please.
As we discussed, striving for developers to understand communities, their language and culture, to incorporate that in AI. How do we educate the communities to understand how their training data will be used and all of the potential consequences?
Yeah.
If you allow, I can share some UNESCO's work in this regard, because it is a big issue. Not only indigenous community, I think all the communities now, their lack of awareness, knowledge, and literacy to know how their data are being used, reused, and maybe for training. That's why UNESCO recently developed data governance toolkit. We also have a whole range of the capacity building program to enhance the all sectors in this area to make sure the data are ethically used, and also to make sure the users are also in full control of the data, particularly the personal one related to them, without jeopardizing the constructive use and development for the algorithm, and also for empowerment. So I can also share some links in the chat. Thank you.
Please. Thank you, ma'am, for your intervention. Thank you very much. I think if there are no comments, questions, we can conclude the session. Actually, as we are now thinking and working on AI tools, how AI can protect and promote indigenous languages and cultures at various levels. But I think that the future belongs to not only AI now, the future belongs to quantum AI. So this quantum AI will enable us to theoretically expand, widen our understanding of IFAP objectives as well as their implementation. So I think soon in the coming years, we will have conferences, meetings, seminars, not only on AI, but on quantum AI. So what we are planning in 2026, we will have a conference in India on quantum AI, linking quantum AI with the objectives of IFAP. So I request all of you to participate in that. And with these few words, I thank all the speakers, Dr. Alain, Dr. William, and Dr. Walters, for their wonderful presentations, and I wish them all the success. And I congratulate all of you on the International Translation Day. And for last but not least, I thank the organizers, Dr. Janit, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhakar, very much. Our next session is moderated by Dr. Rabatla Siva Prasad, former honorary professor, CDLTR, and professor of anthropology at the University of Hyderabad in India. Siva, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much for this session is quite interesting and important session, because it is very aptly titled "Navigating the Future: The Evolving Roles of Indigenous Language Professionals." In fact, this is where the how do we ensure the indigenous language professionals to get kind of skills that are required, or to have some kind of collaborative initiatives with the communities, and also how do we preserve and also promote these languages using digital kind of technologies. We have, I don't want to take much time because the time being very short. I would like to request, because there are three speakers. One is Dr. Thomas Mulani, the first speaker. I would welcome him to speak on low-level, high-impact infrastructure for real translation futures. Dr. Thomas is a project coordinator, Silicon. Floor is yours, Dr. Thomas.
Hi, my name is Tom Mullaney, and I'm professor of Chinese history and the history of technology at Stanford University. I'm also director of Silicon. Silicon is a Stanford presidential initiative focused on advancing digitally disadvantaged languages in the 21st century. Our mission is to support communities to build the digital age they truly want to see. So I'm going to introduce two of our colleagues at Silicon who have built out two particular apps in what we refer to as the Silicon app ecosystem. These are Lexray and MockBlock. These aren't the only projects that we work on within the Silicon app ecosystem. If you want to learn more about what we're doing at Silicon and the many partnerships that we have, especially but not limited to our partnerships and collaborations with First Nation, Indigenous, and Native American groups and language communities, I invite you to visit us at silicon.stanford.edu, or you can always email us or me directly at tsmullaney@stanford.edu. Once again, thank you for inviting us and for having us. And now it's my honor to introduce Lexray and MockBlock.
I want you to imagine this. You're on your phone or your laptop today and you see the date August 25th written on your home screen. But now imagine that you're not in the US and that your native language isn't English. It's actually Spanish. That same date isn't August 25th. It's actually now 25 de agosto. Different order and different words. The way that computers know how to handle this cross-linguistic mapping isn't magic. It's actually thanks to Unicode's huge database, as Tom referenced, called the CLDR, or Common Locale Data Repository. It tells your devices how to display dates, times, and words in hundreds of different languages and locales. So without it, our digital world would basically only function in a few of the dominant languages. But here's the problem. Adding new languages to the CLDR is not as easy as it could be. You can't really just provide the translation. You also need to know how the translation is structured, namely the relative ordering of months, days, and years within the expression. So, for example, an expression of the form 25 de agosto would be entered as a single D followed by the word day in single quotes in 4 capital M's. So if that even sounds a bit confusing, that's exactly the point. For many language speakers, this is one barrier that hinders their ability to contribute data. But that's where my program Lexray comes in. The idea is simple, that instead of requiring contributors to learn how to reformat their translations into complex and somewhat esoteric formatting codes, Lexray does it for them. A speaker just provides the natural translation like 25 de agosto in Spanish, and Lexray automatically converts that into skeleton code that CLDR can understand. And it doesn't just do this one example at a time. It's built with the ability to process batch data, allowing entire sets of translations for a new language to be handled at a single time. This turns what was once a painstaking and manual task into something that is now streamlined and very scalable. The cool thing too is that this tool isn't meant to live in isolation. It will later be embedded into CLDR Academy, which is an online one-stop shop for learning best practices for taking part in digital inclusion efforts and contributing data to the CLDR. So taking a step back, why does this all matter? Well, importantly, it opens the door. So suddenly so many more people can contribute language data without needing to set aside time to learn how to properly format these translations. And community members, not just those internal to Unicode, can contribute their knowledge directly. The impact goes beyond just efficiency and improved accuracy of data, Because really now, every time a new language is entered into the CLDR, it means that speakers of that language can see the digital world in their own terms and not forced into someone else's. This is about ensuring that the internet reflects the richness of human language, the 7,000, as Tom mentioned, not just the convenience of a very few. So, LexRay ensures our data is correctly formatted for the global standard. But before we can incorporate that into Unicode's international library, we need to triple check its accuracy. That's where my colleague Neve Sidani's mock block program comes in.
Thanks so much for the pass off, Daniel. Hey y'all, hope you're doing fantastic. I'm Neve. And before we, get into this, we want to talk about the last project, LexRay. Once we get the output from LexRay, we still need to quality control it before it can be incorporated into Unicode CLDR. So what's the best way of doing that? Visually. As many of you may or may not know, Silicon relies on language contributors to verify accuracy in translation and common data types like months, days, etc. However, this verification process can be really tacky. My project aims to simplify the flow from Silicon to the contributor, providing real-world applications of their language to better explain the context in which their contributions are being used. Here are some of our current barriers. They'll help contextualize things. First, there aren't many tools to automate the creation of UI/UX components. Second, contributors should want to help out, so how might we build an attractive and efficient language contribution initiative? Third, scaling and integrating these projects within Silicon requires lots of steps and iteration. And fourth, how can those who want to develop for disadvantaged languages do so, given that there are little to no design standards for these communities? I want to start by introducing MockBlock. This is an application that takes language data provided by translators and contributors and instantly turns them into real-world, intuitive app mockups and components, nicknamed blocks, so they can see their translation work in context, spot mistakes, and fix them in real time. They don't need to know data science or have any linguistic skills. I built a template system containing over 130 application mockups that you can see on the top left. They take in a sample translated language data set and produce UI/UX components that contextualize how those words may be used. Let's say we want to double check that we have the correct abbreviations of months of the year, like Jan for January, or days of the week, like S for Sunday. Instead of presenting a list in a spreadsheet, at Silicon, we want to present full UI/UX mockups, a calendar UI showing abbreviated months, for example, or perhaps a health tracker app showing abbreviated days of the week. This can then be sent back to the contributor for validation, addressing the lack of UI/UX components for disadvantaged communities and the need for reform in our language contribution system. At Silicon, context is everything. And what better way to embody that than to have real-time examples of how contributor input is used?
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a very interesting presentation where how technology can be used in order to promote translations as an infrastructure thing, and it's an excellent way it is demonstrated. We'll move to the second speaker, Ms. Belu Tikona, computer science PhD student from Georgia Mason University, towards language technologies developed by Indigenous people. It's a very interesting topic. Please, the floor is yours, Ms. Belu Tikona.
Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Belu Tikona. I'm doing my PhD at George Mason University in computer science. I want to share a little bit about myself before we start. I'm originally from Buenos Aires, from Argentina. I'm Andina, which means that my family comes from the Andes region, which is located in the west part of the continent. It's a thread of mountains. And today I would like to share a little bit about my research. I came to the US basically to learn how to develop language technologies for indigenous communities, and I want to do it in an ethic way. So I want to highlight some important points to consider. After that, I'm gonna summarize my research on understanding the status of the indigenous languages from Argentina, spoken in Argentina. And finally, I would like to close with some final remarks on how to create inclusive tracks for indigenous identities so that in the future, they can develop their own technologies. In order to develop language technologies in an ethical way for Indigenous communities, there are many things that we need to consider. So first, it's important to understand how we are modeling language and how we're gonna evaluate the systems. Because most of the current ways that we have to develop language technologies they were designed and developed for institutionalized languages. And they even have governments, states behind that support these languages. People are getting educated in official written forms of these languages. But that's not the case for the indigenous communities because they tend to use the languages in their spoken form. And they, for example, switch to Spanish, for example, in order to write the language and to communicate in written forms. So I have personally interacted with different speakers of different languages, indigenous languages from Latin America. They usually share the same experience that the models that are supposed to work for their language, they do not work as well as reported. And I think that there is a gap between how people speak and the data that is used to evaluate the models, because they usually use benchmark and they include, for example, texts as the Bible, Constitution, laws, and that doesn't necessarily represent how people speak. The next 2 points that I want to highlight are data privacy and security and data governance and sovereignty. Who owns the data? The people who provide their information, their voices, their texts, or the companies or the research institution that provide or funds these kind of projects. The next point that I want to highlight is technology literacy, which is related to the level of education of the communities we're working in. Because, for example, when someone develops like an institution or someone's developed a model and they are released or uploaded to an online platform in an open source setting so everyone can access, you need the computing resources, you need the technical skills to actually download and know how to use and leverage these models. So this is also important to train the community so they can access to the models they're contributing to. And the last point that I would like to highlight is something that I found only in the Indigenous Protocol and Artificial Intelligence position paper, which, by the way, I highly recommend you to check it out. This paper, different Indigenous activists, technology makers, designers, engineers, they all gathered to discuss and suggest guidelines in how AI need to be developed for Indigenous voices. And for example, it is mentioned there the importance of the relationality and reciprocality of technology, because by creating technology, we're also creating ways in which communities are going to interact with the world. And I do not only mean interaction with other people, but I also mean to how people are going to interact with the nature, with the environment. These are only some of the points that I wanted to highlight about how to ethically develop technology for these communities. And in general, the literature agree that in order to address real communities' needs and to follow their vision, we want to make sure that we include them in the development. So the idea is that we include them so we can follow their values, we can follow their rules, we can follow their visions, and ideally make them the leaders of the projects. And if we aim to include the communities, I feel like we first need to understand their demolinguistic situation. And for example, in Argentina, in 2025, we published the first survey of indigenous languages spoken in Argentina. And one of the main findings is that we do not have reliable data on the numbers of speakers, despite of having a question about it in the national census data. I'm gonna leave a QR of the map so you can see an updated version of this map. In the paper, we discuss some of the issues of the census data. And the second part of the paper, we focus on understanding who does research on indigenous languages. We survey 50 papers and we classify based on the identify different type of contributions. And we also analyze where is the language data collected from. We basically identify that all the available corpora is basically collected for languages that are also spoken in other countries, because research institutions from the neighbor countries are actually doing research on this for these communities, But unfortunately, by that moment, until this publication, there was no research on the local languages that are only spoken in the Argentinian territories. So I would like to finally share some thoughts from my perspective, because when I talk about the inclusion of indigenous identities, I want to analyze my personal story and to identify myself as someone who is kind of included. So in my case, my personal case, my family, they come from different communities from Bolivia, and they moved to Buenos Aires, and that's where I was educated. And unfortunately, I had to leave my community in order to get educated in the University of Buenos Aires. I had a very privileged position because it's a public university, and the state and the whole Argentinian population supported my education. And I had there many opportunities to go abroad and to reflect on my own identity, because for many years I didn't identify at all as an indigenous descendant. And it made me realize what it means, to ask me what it means to be an indigenous, knowing that I was born and raised in Buenos Aires City, maybe far away from our original communities, how the racism of the country has limited my self-identification. So I think that to conclude this talk, I would like to highlight that for me it's very important that we create inclusion traps. We have to design them, we have to design them, think about them. And it's very important to be conscious about it, even if you are part or not of the community. So my final suggestion will be for non-community members to promote these kind of spaces. For example, give spaces where different people who don't have the opportunity to speak up, create a spaces so they can actually participate. And if you have a privileged position and you can actually have a voice in a space, be also supported and give your position to those who don't have a voice. The second point is to train people with indigenous roots. And the last comment is to be aware of the racism that maybe we live in academic institutional environments. And finally, for indigenous identities, I believe it's very important that we create and build community. It doesn't matter where we are. It's very important to understand where we are from, understand our roots, connect with them. And even if we're far away from our original community, we can always maybe track and find people who are having a very similar path. Finally, I would like to thank everyone who has helped me on this journey, especially to my advisor, Dr. Antonio Anastasopoulos at George Mason University, and also to my former collaborators and mentors who always supported me on this particular journey. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me now or reach out to me. You can find me on my contacts on my website.
Thank you, Ms. Belticona. Actually, it was very interesting kind of issues that you have raised. I'm sure the question hour time, you will have some questions from that, because very interesting aspects like inclusive identities, as well as ethical aspects with regard to looking at the community's participation, all that. Thank you very much. The last of the speakers for this session is Mr. Ram Mohan, is a founder, Coalition on Digital Impact from USA, and Mr. Christian Dawson, Executive Director, Infrastructure Coalition, USA. They'll be speaking on linguistic equity in the years of AI, CODI's strategy for digital inclusion. Floor is yours, Mr. Ramon.
Good morning, everyone, and happy International Translation Day. I'm Christian Dawson, co-founder of the Coalition on Digital Impact, or CODI. Our mission is simple but urgent: to ensure that the internet of the future is usable and meaningful for everyone, and not just those whose languages already dominate online spaces. This is particularly pertinent to Indigenous communities who are traditionally underrepresented in online content as minority language speakers. I'm proud to be able to introduce CODI to you today. Cody was created to ensure that the internet of the future is usable and meaningful for everyone, not just those whose languages and cultures already dominate online. Cody began as a coalition of like-minded organizations, and we're currently transitioning to a sustainable, operational nonprofit focused on linguistic and cultural equity. Our core mission is to support the last mile institutions doing the hard work of connecting the unconnected, the ones that are already in there doing that work. We're talking about rural libraries and indigenous community hubs. We're talking about refugee centers and humanitarian aid networks. These groups are trying to set up infrastructure, but they don't just need infrastructure. They need tools that speak the languages of the people they're trying to serve. They need tools that respect their knowledge systems and that operate on their terms. And we want to create an organization that helps them get access to those tools. Here's a quote I wanted to share from you, to you from Vint Cerf, one of the internet pioneers who was present at the kickoff call for Cody. And Vint said, "Technological advancements may accelerate the loss or incapacity to use many of the world's languages, creating yet another digital divide. Meaningful spoken and written linguistic access is necessary to realize the internet's full potential." He said it really well, and that's what we're doing. Because absent effective action, we are going to end up in a situation where people have access to knowledge, trust information, they can participate fully in the digital age, or they don't. And so that's the urgency of what we're doing and why we're doing it now. Language plays a crucial role in digital access. If information isn't available in your language, your access is blocked. If job or educational opportunities require English or another dominant language, you're left behind. People trust and engage more when information is in their own native tongue. And when language disappears from the digital world, culture itself is at risk. So how are we responding to that? So Cody is building frameworks for culturally relevant language data sets. We're building platforms for AI-driven language learning and preservation. We're building research to identify where language barriers block access. And we're building operational best practices for non-Latin scripts. We're also trying to build direct partnerships with last mile institutions who are doing the hard work of connecting the unconnected. Our goal is not abstract, it's to give communities real tools grounded in their realities so that they can fully belong online. One of the things we're focused on is trying to figure out how this can be relevant and timely in the era of AI. AI tools are only as inclusive as the data that feeds them. And right now, most of the world's languages, especially those rooted in oral traditions, are vastly underrepresented in digital systems. So Cody's trying to work on projects that work to change that. We've launched our first research project, defining a minimum viable data set, or MVD, for cultural and linguistic empowerment. Building linguistic diversity into AI models will improve our online experience and benefit individual users, businesses, and society as a whole. These are some of the foundational questions that we're hoping to better understand as a result of this significant first-of-its-kind undertaking. What kinds of language data are most critical for preserving cultural integrity in digital tools? What constitutes a minimum viable data set for underrepresented languages? And how can communities define what content is meaningful for them? How could they be ethically captured, structured, and made useful for tools like NLP, translation engines, and voice assistants? As we move forward, and as you leave here today, I'd like to highlight a few of the larger questions that we as a society might consider when it comes to broadening meaningful digital access. We're pushing ourselves and our partners to think big. What would it take for every child to grow up seeing their language in the digital world? How can businesses, developers, and governments collaborate to treat language equity as foundational, not optional? And can we design AI systems that don't just include, but empower all communities? Digital access is the key to unlocking the internet's full potential for all users. If we get this right, we don't just bridge divides, we build a more inclusive, more vibrant internet for everyone. And that's Cody's mission, ensuring that no community is left out of the AI-powered digital age based on language. Thank you, and I invite you all to get involved with us at Cody.global.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Christian Dawson. It is a very interesting and important issues that you have raised with regard to the kind of data set, minimum data sets required. How can communities can define? How can access to information, access to other opportunities, economic and other opportunities, how they are important in these developing of the technologies. And that is where you really talked about the strategies for digital inclusion in this. Thank you very much. Now, these three papers are open for question answer. I would invite anyone to raise issues on this. You can specifically mention the names of the persons and address your questions, or you can also address questions general to everyone. Thank you. Maybe you can see whether there is anything in chat.
Yeah, I have a question. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Hello, I'm Tabia Deville. I'm one of the Translation Commons volunteers. For the last speaker, for Christian Dawson on the Cody project, I was interested, to what extent are you able to support communities that might not be part of the network? Do you have public resources available, or do you provide individual consultations for them?
Is he there?
It is, I'm afraid we don't have Christian on the panel. So if anybody else wants to discuss their own other frameworks, otherwise we can go to the next question.
Any other?
Yeah, I have a question, which I'll address to Ms. Takuna, although it would be nice if Christian was here. And he referenced a minimum viable data set, and I would be interested in whether or not it's possible to create some kind of a checklist for the range of topics that would be included in such a data set. And as someone representing an indigenous community, I just wonder if you have thoughts on whether that's even possible, because for each community, sometimes they have topics that they discuss which may not be generalizable. And so this idea of a minimum viable data set, is that something that makes sense but would actually be inclusive for the entire range of communities and how they talk, since that's something that you also touched on?
Yeah, I mean, if I understood the question correctly, you're suggesting me how to create a checklist for the a special topic that the community is interested in, on what kind of represent them. Is that what you're asking?
Well,
yeah,
that
I think that
would be more general for creating an MVD. Does that even make sense, since communities sometimes have topics that the world at large wouldn't recognize?
Yeah, I think it's for that kind of for this kind of reason, it's very important to include communities as much as possible, and to build a relationship, as we probably we all agree that, because each community, as you said, is completely different, and I don't think that we need to try to create a checklist of things that these are the things that we covered, so we've done our job. like it's part of like asking within. And of course, even when you talk to communities, like it's very hard to define what is representative of the people, because maybe you're interacting with only 10, 20 people, like 1,000 people, but it doesn't represent like the whole culture, because it's very fluid, like for example, for my community or my family, if you cross the Argentinian border and you go to Bolivia, if you cross to Bolivian border and go to Peru, something might slightly change, and culture people always like changing, we're evolving continuously. So I think that the key point is just whatever we are building, try to like acknowledge we interacted with these people and this house performing, and we expect this kind of result. We didn't evaluate in this other type of domain. So when people like use our model or system, they know that, okay, what I'm using, it was tested in this environment, but that doesn't mean it's gonna work well in this other completely different dialect or different like environment.
Thank you. Thank you. I think there is a general question by Audrey. How can we encourage policymakers and the private sector to invest in languages with smaller speaker populations? Any one of you can answer on that. It's there in the chat. You can just check. It's a very important, interesting question.
Yeah, I can share a small comment. I think it's very important that we, as I said before, like we build community, because I think that we need to convince like policymakers, right? And sometimes we need to like create community and go with them, like request them and demand our needs. And of course, as individuals, maybe it's harder to have a voice, but if we are stronger and we all talk about it, if we go to social media and we talk with journalists, we try to make connections. As I said before, like that's gonna eventually, we're gonna eventually be heard by them. And that's why I said like very important to build community everywhere, even if we are not in the technology system or like wherever we are, that we build that like connections.
But further questions? Because this question actually can be answered by the other members of the panel.
Alan Melby has his hand up, Siva.
Yeah. Okay. Thomas is there, Dr. Thomas?
Alan Melby has his hand up.
Okay, okay. Then
I can read his question in the chat. It says, what is the minimum amount of bilingual data needed to build a viable NMT, neural machine translation system?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeanette, for reading my question. It's a sincere question, and I think we have an amazing panel and attendees. Maybe someone can answer this.
I believe Jean had his hand up.
Yes, I mean, I can maybe share some information based on past experiences with this type of question. Based at least on my experience, it's going to strongly depend on the language pair and how closely related the two languages are. Another factor that also strongly affects the amount of data required also has to do with the scripts. Two languages that use the same script typically require less data to train. The number of sentences, or if that's how we want to measure the data, or paragraphs or whatever, has been decreasing, I think, over the past 10 or so years. And so whereas I think maybe 10 years ago, I would have probably said that we would have needed tens of millions of parallel sentences, of like bilingual sentences to get something close to, well, something decent, at least that could be post-edited and still be helpful. Nowadays, I mean, there are, at least for relatively close languages, there are cases where even just hundreds of thousands of sentences, if not less, can be helpful. It matters also whether the languages at hand, the languages of interest, are closely related to languages that are well represented in the sort of corpora that are created from the web. Because then through methods such as cross-lingual transfer, the system will be able to draw upon its knowledge of closely related languages, and that means that less training data is required.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think any more questions?
We have a couple of hands up. We have Tabea and Andre.
Okay. Yeah, I see that.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for any of the panelists or anyone who might want to pitch in there. There was an article recently, I can't remember where it was published, but I can share it if there's interest, that was looking into the quality of Wikipedia translations. And one of the concerns was that there are Wikipedia translations that are very, very low quality for vulnerable languages. And the indication was that it seems like there would be AI generated translations that have gone up there without review, without, by people who are not actually speakers of the languages, and that this might end up creating a feedback loop. First of all, it's vulnerable for the language because it influences how people see the language, read it, and so on, but also that this would then be used to train models. And actually create a negative feedback loop in terms of how the models are used. And that for me kind of raises the question over ownership on data sovereignty and these questions. How do you actually prevent these things from happening, just a free for all when anyone can do whatever they want with a language? Does anyone have thoughts on how serious of an issue do you think this actually is in the bigger pictures? And what might we do to actually stop it from happening if it is an issue, in your opinion?
Maybe we can take the next question from Mr. Andre Pellegrin, and then maybe combinedly they can answer together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Siva. Maybe in my presentation also I'll be addressing some of that concern that Tabe has reported on Wikipedia, is how much can we trust AI-generated text? What I wanted just to contribute from a user, I'm not the techie guy to speak about data set sizes, but in our company, we are very innovative and we use LLMs extensively. I think today with small language models, we can train engines with as small as a few thousand segments, but it depends on in indigenous languages, and it can be extensive to go, with huge size of data. But still, domain-based and small language models can perform with thousands of segments only of data sets. That was my comment.
Thank you. I think we'll first give the floor to Dr. Thomas to answer, or should we complete the next question? And is it okay with Dr. Thomas? Shall we?
Yes, that's entirely fine. Thank you.
Okay. I think that this could be the last of the questions. Sinom So, Michelle Chukwuma.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Also, I don't want to ask a question. I want to contribute to a question that was asked before Mr. Andre. She was talking about Wikipedia and the privacy concern in it. First of all, maybe in my presentation also, I'll be able to clarify the Wikipedia site, but also for my presentation in the language aspects, the Wikipedia database is actually sort of compromised. It's not basically giving the rights translation or the right data itself when you give it to the indigenous people of that language. So it's given a certain language, but when you give it to the people of that language, they tend to interpret it wrongly, saying that it's not right. So for the privacy concern, basically I would say everything on Wikipedia um s- tend to be for public use itself. So tend to be for public use itself. So even though you take the data and you put it into your system to get an answer for it, the privacy in it still stays in your own region. It's not like a big concern, but when it comes to a concern, is basically when you go to an individual and ask them for a data. So you have to give a consent or like a mention that you take a data from those places. Yeah. So yeah.
Thank you. I think Dr. Thomas, you can respond and others, and then we'll conclude it because we are shooting up our time.
I'll be brief. I think a colleague just now said it better than I could. I just think one framework for the discussion, which would be useful, has to do, for lack of a better word, with the question of perfection. So if you imagine two different scenarios, one is a first-year language instruction. That instructor should be fluent, should be operating. What it would do a disservice to the students, to communities in this hypothetical scenario if that instructor was anything less than fully competent, fully capable. And in some sense, I feel like that's the analogy to any language data that is going to be trained on, because it's going to create that negative feedback loop. It's basically pollution in the water supply of life. At the other end of the spectrum, there is maybe a scenario: you're out in a public park and someone needs help and someone yells, "Is there a doctor here?" Or the earlier talk we heard about chatbots assisting with needs for access or for migrant laborers. In a human case, if you imagine that without any tools, any technologies, just a human being, even an imperfect translator would be infinitely better for a person who needs that. Speaking in a semi-choppy or broken language, as long as help is gotten, as long as what is needed by an individual is gotten, then in that case, perfection is less important than life itself. And I think that a distinction there, just like in human life and language, forget AI, forget technology, this spectrum of perfection is varied, and depending upon which part of basically the sort of the digital age we're talking about, different shades of perfection should be the goal. In some cases, it should be absolutely gold standard, and in other cases, just as in regular everyday human life, even having someone to assist you is key. And I think that that's also part of what language in the digital age should be. Language in the digital age should be as human and humane as language, prior to the advent of zeros and ones.
Thank you very much. I think we are already quite away from our time. I will skip my concluding remarks, but I must thank all the three presentations. They are very diverse but excellent, well knit kind of arguments are put in. And thank you very much for these wonderful presentations. And I must also thank organizers, especially Zinet and others, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Siva. Moving to the next session, Conrad, if you can share the slide. Thank you. Our next moderator is Dr. Hanem El Farahati, Associate Professor of Arabic Language, Translation and Interpreting at the University of Leeds in the UK. Hanem, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you. It's an honor really to be chairing this panel for the second year in a row. And it's a very topical panel on ethical pathways in the digital age, AI and the future of indigenous languages, or language translation, I should say. So before I hand over to our esteemed colleagues, speakers today, I wanted to say a few words quickly. I'm aware we are behind in schedule, but I'll be quick. Just wanted to begin by stressing that while AI offers the remarkable possibilities for preserving endangered languages, it also raises, as we have been hearing, ethical concerns, especially if it's developed without empowering the community, involving them, and even giving them ownership. It risks overlooking or even erasing minority voices and so on, as we have been hearing. So it's this panel today brings together diverse voices from professionals, practitioners, researchers, and industry players and leaders, project leaders. It speaks to these opportunities that I mentioned and addresses some of these challenges. This wide diversity of voices and cultural contexts invites us to think about AI both as a useful, creative tool to support our endeavors of preserving indigenous languages and safeguarding culture and ancestral knowledge. But it also highlights the dangers of using it without all these elements in mind. It further reminds us of the need to retain the human touch despite technological advances. We have 7 speakers in this panel, so quite a lineup I'm excited about. So we will please stick to 8 minutes to give the floor to some time to questions at the end. Without further ado, I am going to introduce the first speaker, Mr. Chukwuma, founder of Ms. Space Technology from Nigeria. And he is talking to us today about revitalizing indigenous languages with AI, building the Igbo chatbot for the next generation. The floor to yours, please.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chukwuma Michelle Chinomso, and I'm the founder of Space Technology. Today, I'm going to be talking about revitalizing indigenous language with AI, building the Igbo chatbot for the next generation. First, I'm going to be looking at why does this matter as a cultural significance. First reason that we're looking at is the endangered language. Over 2,500 languages are endangered worldwide, Igbo at risk. 2, generational disconnects. Urbanization and digital neglect are pushing younger generation away from cultural roots. 3, preservation of identity. Revitalizing the Igbo language is essential not only for communication, but for cultural identity. As I said, Igbo Amaka Chat was built or is built by Space Technology and is a cultural and technological solution for the Igbo language, which is at risk. One of our purposes is a tech-powered initiative to preserve and promote the Igbo language and its culture. Our call to is an AI-powered chatbot that teaches, speaks, and engages in Igbo language. Our audience are targeting both children, youth, and diaspora community. These are the main target because most people at this limits or at this range tend to leave out the Igbo language, the culture, and its heritage itself. Our key features in Igbo Amaka Chat are language learning, interactive storytelling, cultural education through games and proverbs. So as is being noted that Igbo Amaka chat doesn't just chat, but it also speaks. Thirdly, we're going to be looking at the power of technology for language revitalization. One, interactive conversation, conversational AI in multiple Igbo dialects, such as Nsukka, Owerri, and Onitsha. As we all know, a language can have different dialects and different range of its accents. And also Igbo is one of that. And that is why Igbo Amaka chat doesn't just based on one dialect, but it based on various variety. So even though you're speaking with one accent or the other, Igbo Amaka chat is able to detect and able to communicate back to its user, giving the user what it wants in that specific dialect. Secondly, our cultural heritage. Igbo Amaka chat teaches Igbo proverbs, folktales, idioms, and expression, embedded with folk songs and moral lessons. Thirdly, age adaptability, customized learning for kids, teens, and adults. As we all know it, that age is one of the most important things. So Igbo Amaka charts also customize its setting based on this age gap. So we can detect if you're a kid, if you're a teen, or if you're an adult. Lastly, we looked into the tech infrastructure. Igbo Amaka is not just built, but is built upon Igbo natural language processing model, community current database, and voice collection pipeline. We're going to be looking further into the voice collection pipeline that Igbo Amaka was built on. Next, we'll be talking about the ethical community-driven approach and progress. One is the ethical data use. Content sourced with concepts from native speaker representing cultural integrity. Igbo Amaka chat isn't just built, we didn't just scrape and train data from the web or whatsoever it may be, but we precise more on getting content from native speakers, indigenous people of Igbo land. Secondly, community ownership. As I said before, we reject, scrape, and train. We don't just get data from the web and train those, but we ensure human insight to preserve Igbo cultural value. That means we are looking into the most important thing, getting our content or data from Igbos or Igbo men in the Igbo land. Thirdly, we talk about the recognition and the impact. Positive feedback from Igbo linguistics, educators, and a Harvard lecturer. And while we were building the software, we decided to send it to different professors, linguistic experts, and also educators. One of our top priority was one of the lecturers at Harvard University, which tested the software and also acknowledged that the software can be impactful in cultural ways and also preserving the Igbo language even in decades to come. Lastly, we talk about our status for now. Currently, we're working on a prototype and we're seeking funding for full launch, wider community engagement. For this, our status, we are only on the prototype, and we are seeking on how to advance more, how to reach out to more audience, to more people in the educational sector, making sure that this software is available for both kids in their nursery and primary schools, and also making sure that this software is available for adults, maybe the age adults, because when we make the software available for the aged adult, they tend to impute data, and those data are being stored in our database, which will make it available for future generations to use. So lastly, we encourage and will look for more community experts, tech experts, cultural leaders around the world to join our movement. We welcome linguistics experts, tech experts, cultural leaders to collaborate with us because this is what we need to be able to make the software available for Nigerians and also be able to comprise other languages in Nigeria. As we all know it, or even know, and we have over or more than 500 languages in Nigeria. So these are languages that are in risk. So if we're able to get tech experts, linguists, cultural leaders around the world in Nigeria and outside, we'll be able to expand more than the Igbo language. Secondly, we are looking for volunteers, donors, educators are invited to support and spread this vision. And we welcome everyone to be able to help us spread this vision because with the help of others, we believe that we're able to touch other life and encourage others to take back their culture and their heritage itself. Lastly, if you wish to, or if you wish to contact me and be a part of this vision and this growth we already started, I encourage you to email me at michellechinomso@gmail.com. I repeat again, michellechinomso@gmail.com, MISHALCHINOMSO@gmail.com. You emailing me and you sending me a message will help us being partner and help us be in more collaboration, making sure that we're able to touch more life, grow more, and be able to make sure that more languages are able to spread, not just the Igbo language, but Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, etc. This is Igbo Amaka Chat once again, and it's the language that lives in us as an Igbo man or Igbo community itself. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate. I can't wait to hear from you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chukwama. That's really, really exciting. I mean, thank you for this pioneering initiative actually for the younger generation. When we talk about indigenous languages, I think this is what we might be missing in the spectrum, that we need to involve these younger generations and address them in the way they like. So, and I salute the way you design this a chatbot and using some innovative tools and things from your culture, like the way younger generation want to be talked to, really. I also thank you for highlighting the challenge about the tech side of things and building the infrastructure, which is also very very important in this initiative. We'll take questions at the end, as you know. So I move on now to our next speaker, Ms. Solmani, COO of the Center for Pacific Languages in New Zealand. She is going to talk to us about Guardians of Ancestral Knowledge, Pacific AI and Journey to Digital Sovereignty. The floor to you, please.
Kia ora koutou, One Pacific greetings, and thank you so much for the introduction. Just on my presentation, I'm going to make it very quickly today because I know time is running out. Just to give you a context about the Center for Pacific Languages, we're about over 46 years, established in 1978. We have a teaching program of over 12 language courses accredited by New Zealand, Aotearoa. We have a translation interpretation services of 22 languages. We also have a cultural capability and leadership program. We have a little arm of media production and digital content development and a community engagement arm as well. As part of our work, we also launched a Speak Pacific app globally, which is almost 100,000 downloads across the globe for our Pacific languages, only 7 languages, which you can see here. That's the number of languages, and we're looking to increase more languages onto the app. Now, one of the key areas for us in terms of our translation space and interpretation, one of the key things for us is specific languages, that there are more than just one Pacific language in the regions, and we are working alongside many of our cultural knowledge holders and key leaders in our communities that hold as being the custodians of our language. One of the main things that we recognize in this area, that whilst AI is a really important tool and it will be the future for us, we recognize that our human voices are still very important and crucial for the integrity of our language to remain, in the manner of it, that it remains within the context of the translation space. And this means that the area that we're working on at the moment is taking our people through a full accreditation program, working with Australia here, New Zealand, and also including Maori. Te Reo language is very much part of Aotearoa New Zealand, and so apart from our other Pacific languages as well. So hence, that's the reason why we're working so hard in this space to build the pool. Many of our languages are also on endangered and very much risky in terms of the UNESCO listing. And so what our work is to not only preserve, revitalize, but also to sustain the languages for future. Now, the other part too, as you heard right through the presentations, through the presentation earlier on, it's always about data sovereignty and IP for us. Whilst one size doesn't fit all, we recognize that the different languages that we have, and I can give you an example with PNG, Papua New Guinea. There's over 800 languages within one region alone in the Pacific, one Pacific island, and so many of our languages, many of them will have only one. I'm also a translator and interpreter for Rutuman language, and that's also an endangered language now, as we are a very small population, come from a very small island. So all of this and the work that we do at the center, not only to lift the caliber of our languages, but the translation space becomes a very vital and a fundamental area for us to build that capability, as many of our knowledge holders continue to pass on. What does AI mean in capturing that data? But again, what does it mean with the cultural integrity of our language for us to hold on to it? So the areas that we work on really is the technical support that we really need in terms of our Pacific languages. How does it look like? We've heard as well the area of language being translated and it's not culturally right. We've seen that in many of documents that have come through to us for retranslation or for peer review, the areas including using Google Translate, other areas of AI that's been used to draw translation in some of our languages, especially our Samoan language. And we know that for Te Reo, there's a huge work here in New Zealand to ensure that their cultural integrity, but also incorporating AI for the future. What does it look like for us? Again, as we said earlier on, as I mentioned, the importance of building our people. We know that languages, we continue to lose a language, but how can we build a pool that will sustainably keep us for a younger generation? The intermarriages between our communities here in Aotearoa and across the Pacific, English has been a dominant language here for us in New Zealand, and we know that with the work of all of our communities, we have to work together, building that pool, building the confidence in our people to come into the space of translation is a key area that we're working on. And AI will be a sort of a support system for us in the future, but we see that there's a big piece of work that we need to do with our community, as bringing them to be able to come together, look at ways to design courses, not doing it in the Western lens, but we're looking at how does that accreditation look like for our people in terms of designing our own. And so that's the piece of work that we're working specifically in this area, and working alongside many key organizations, but we want to ensure that the data sovereignty and the IP remains as part of a key component, that our people do play a key role in that area when it comes to AI. So we want to work with people who are really have the interest at heart for our people, but also will support us in terms of the data space and AI. So that's the work that we do in the area. That's why I just want to wrap it up. Yeah, we have more than 22 Pacific Island countries in terms of languages, but we also recognize that this work will be predominantly be vital for us and fundamental for us to take it into the future. And we look forward to working with whoever wants to work in the space and support the work of our Pacific languages as we look to expand and work alongside many, not just our Pacific languages in Aotearoa. We have over 100 languages that the government use here in Aotearoa as well for government work, but also for the community as well. So that's it from me, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions as well. So thank you so much for taking the time. For Yexi Hanisit, ngā mihi nui.
Thank you so much, Ms. Solomone. That's really, really interesting to take us through your endeavors at the Center for Pacific Languages and providing us about more details about the app. Not to mention the important point that you highlighted, just to tell us not get too excited about AI, but remember that the human voices and the data sovereignty still matters. And I agree with you completely, because this is what we can check the quality of content we produce and publish, and yes, and that's why accreditation of the programs also is so relevant to this endeavor. Thank you so much. I move on to the third speakers. We have Dr. Mahdi, Senior Director of Heritage Lab, and Dr. MacDonald, Vice President of Heritage Lab 2 from Canada. And both will be speaking to us about Beyond Extraction, Building Community-Owned AI for Indigenous Language Sovereignty. The floor to you both.
All right. Ulukut Natasha McDonald vunga nunumi view vunga. Natasha MacDonald. I'm originally from Nunavik, Gujarapik in Nunavik, which is part of northern Quebec, Canada, which is also part of Inuit Nunangat, the 4 Inuit regions in Arctic Canada. We're talking to you today, my colleague and I are talking to you today about our I project. I in Inuktitut means hi. It also spelled in English is AI. So basically, our nonprofit organization has a project called I, where we are developing Inuit-led specific technology being developed by our communities for our communities. So it's by Inuit for Inuit. We are offering local employment in AI development, data curation, platform design. So we are hiring people from our communities in these roles. The community controls the framework. We control through a language committee made up of Inuit speakers who provide ongoing oversight, and they continuously provide feedback to improve the models and correct any errors that may be coming through the AI model. And so we introduce ourselves first, but we also have to explain why we are leading this organization. Is that a lot of the technology out there, as many of us have may be aware here, is that there's a neocolonial language lens that's being used in technology. It's being built for communities, not by or with communities. A lot of big tech initiatives are trying to extract our languages, and that they're using AI models in isolation from our communities. They garner very minimal community input, if any. And their statistical models favor a dominant dialect. So in my region, we have 3 or 4 dialects in a small population of 12,000 people. And so favoring one over the other has the potential of minimizing the relevance and use of the other dialects in our region. So the result is a huge exclusion and homogenization when we as Inuit are a diverse group. We are not one homogeneous group. An example of translation out there, if we input a text into an AI model, such as apply by job description, common in our communities, apply by November 6th by contacting the NV Secretary Treasurer of your community, which is essentially the municipal office. Bing translation will give you learn until November 6th to contact your Cambodian secretary. And a Google translation will give you, try to apply by November 6th by contacting your government accountant. And so there are certainly challenges with big tech trying to learn our language, our dialects without our input. I pass it over to my colleague Ali.
And so the challenge was, how fast could a solution be developed that was more adequate, more precise, and more accurate? And so when we talk about dataset quality, we look at community members know their language, know what a quality translation is, much better than an organization that comes from the outside in terms of building a translation model. And as it was alluded to in the Wikipedia example, when a community is building the tools themselves, they know exactly what data should be going into the model for the model to be able to perform adequately. Over 2 weeks, we had community members collect over 2,000 to 3,000 examples of Inuktitut translations. This was a monumental effort. Originally, the timeline was 2 to 3 months. The data was captured over 2 weeks. After that, we fine-tuned an open source model. Again, we're talking about scale. This open source model was trained on a small Mac Studio. So this is very capable and very small and able to be done in the community. It was trained, and we realized that the metrics were above and beyond what big tech initiatives had. And so the question was, well, we're using metrics that are very centered around Latin translations. These metrics do not take into account complex polysynthetic languages. And so we realized that these metrics that say Google and Microsoft translations scored relatively high in, but when deployed in communities were not adequate. So we started building that framework of a language committee that can have a human in the loop in terms of evaluating these translation models of, is that model that you're building actually feasible and adequate at the community level? From there, we also realized that we needed to separate these models into specific dialects. So having an overarching Inuktitut model and then breaking down that model into submodels, models that are specifically trained on dialects and variations in terms of words and morphology. In addition to that, specific domain translations. So breaking those dialects down into specific translations for the medical sector, for education, for legal, making sure that tools are very specific to the application, not building an overarching tool that's able to translate everything, because that's just not possible. You can't put all dialects and all types of translations in one data set. And we also built a contribution platform where you can contribute words, you can contribute translation examples, and be able to validate that in a cycle with the language committee. And all of that ends up going into a big dictionary that's searchable by the community, where you can add words, where you can tag your community, all of this feeding into that cycle and that loop that allows continuous improvement of the AI models. I hand it back to Natasha.
Nakalmeek. So a big preoccupation for us, and some of the discussion and questions we've heard up to now relate to data sovereignty. We are a small population, but we are an existing group in this world. We are global citizens. So the local infrastructure, in terms of our servers, we host them locally. We have Inuit-controlled access protocols. We have complete ownership over our cultural and linguistic data that is being inputted. We have our self-determined governance structures. And those, I'm not saying that they're complete, but they are being built by us through our community organizations and community leaders. And that we are focused on providing sustainable employment creation. We are small fly-in, only isolated Arctic communities. And so being able to create opportunities for youth in a whole new sector of technology and AI We have hired all kinds of youth from all kinds of our community, from any number of our communities into full-time positions to do the data collection and to be trained in AI developments. And one of our students, we're very proud, he's so motivated. He's decided to go on to college in January to take on technology while he's also doing this work.
And so we've been branching out very quickly to different communities. And so the word of mouth has very surprisingly been going around through youth and youth recruiting youth training other youth from other communities, flying in, training them, and having this energy, this big buildup of what can you do with this translation technology. It's not only a translator, that's a static translator that's to be used by anyone. That tool can evolve into voice technology. It can evolve into an avatar that's currently being developed, a character that you can ask historical, cultural questions about people, about places, about animals, and be able to get responses back in Inuktitut, English, and French, with the long-term goal of being able to incorporate this into other translators for other Indigenous languages, and for two Indigenous community members from different communities to be able to communicate together. And so this drive, this motivation has been incredible. We've realized that in this day and age, you're capable from building everything from A to Z without a third-party intervention from a big technological company or whatnot. All of that can be done within the community.
Nakalmi, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Nekimik, thank you. Once again, thank you so much for highlighting the role of the community and taking us through all these exciting initiatives, and also maintaining data protection, which is one challenge, ethical challenge, but also training the community infrastructure and training them. One major challenge that you responded to in your talk. Thank you so much. That stays the question of willingness of the community to contribute and continue to training them around digital literacy and so on. It's a challenge that's ongoing to every other Indigenous language, but I'm sure you will deal with it. Thank you so much. The next speaker is Dr. Krajewski. And excuse me if I don't do justice to your names. I tried my best. He has masters and also Miss Tina Wellman, instructor at the University of Treaty 6 Territory. Am I saying this right? I couldn't pronounce the first part of it, so excuse me. If I didn't say it right, please correct me. And both speakers are from Canada. They are going to speak to us today about using a realistic text-to-speech model for voiceovers of English to create translated books. The floor to you both.
Hey, thank you. Let's see if I can share our screen.
Yeah.
Screen 2, and then share sound. How's that?
Yes, thank
And
you.
Tina, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Hey, so I'll start and then we'll tag team a little bit, I guess, okay? Yeah, so we're talking about a project. It's been a 3-year project. It's been a really, really fun project. I guess we can start with talking a little bit about who we are. So I'm Ross Krajewski. I take care of the Masters in Indigenous Language Revitalization program at University Nu'uqelatine Tayotsinistame Maganak Blue Quills. And Tina?
So yes, the UNBQ, University Nu'uqelatine Tayotsinistame Maganak Blue Quills. Those two middle words, one is in Dene language and the other one is in Nihiawiwin. So this was once a residential school where we work at. Actually, I'm in one of the offices here. So it houses two languages. We have some Dene Sitzlin speakers from the Cold Lake area. We have Dr. Jesse Sylvester on staff for that
for that part, and then us, of course, here. Yeah, Ross.
Yeah. So formerly a residential school was taken over by 7 owning nations in the 70s. We're from the Indigenous Languages Department, and we have a master's degree we have a master's program in Indigenous language revitalization, Cree and Dene undergraduate programs, working on immersion stuff as well. So we're talking about this 3-year project that we did using realistic text-to-speech model for voiceovers, English to Cree translated books, or as Tina likes to say, making a computer speak Nihiawewen. This is a large collaboration between ourselves, Mohawk and Senchothan language communities represented by Saanich School Board and Onkwanana Kintiokwa, respectively, NRC, National Research Council of Canada, National Institute for Informatics in Japan, and the University of Edinburgh. Kind of 2 intersecting parts for this one. There's a 3-year project to create realistic text-to-speech generation model for low resource languages, and paired with the development of a conjugated word conjugator or a word builder, which is suited to a lot of North American Indigenous languages, which tend to be polysynthetic. So you can put a lot of combinations together with a good word builder, which is a really useful resource. We're going to talk briefly about our book translation stuff as well, and specifically using text-to-speech for revitalization and for things like translated books, voiceovers. Here's just a photo of one of the kickoff meetings in Victoria on the West Coast. So briefly about the text-to-speech, we utilized only about 10 and a quarter hours of recordings, and it's across 9 speakers. And this was kind of the goal from the start, is how can we create realistic text-to-speech models that kind of faithfully, to whatever degree of precision, represent the text. And the thinking is that, well, this is a revitalization context. Low resource language is often the norm, and so how can we create a model for maybe replicating this in the future? So specifically, we thought it would be useful for learners of Nihiawewen or Cree, but of course, there's many applications. So the training data is interesting. It was mostly short sentences, phrases, and single words, and then as a result of this, the word or the phrasal or the clausal prosody, the intonation, the way it sounds, is great. It even captures some really interesting pragmatic stuff. There's one, it's not in this talk, but one of the models actually has like breath intake at certain kind of interesting spots, because the speaker who we recorded it from was really consistent in the way he did it. But it wasn't trained on longer passages, which is important, I think. It required a bit of ingenuity to work with a small amount of recorded speech. And one issue that comes up is speaker variation, individual speaker variation, and regional variation. Then we have the conjugator, the word builder for these polysynthetic languages. We're going to look at the Cree one. And it can be paired with a text-to-speech model as well. And of course, there's the really large, so aside from the technical stuff and the revitalization stuff, of course, there's the really big discussion on ethical concerns. And so ended up being a fairly powerful text-to-speech model. And so it's a thing that we paid attention to from the start. So let's see. So this is, we've got 2 kind of samples of the verb conjugator. And so this is the text-to-speech version of one of our fluent speakers, Wayne. And this is just a view of what the conjugator kind of looks like. You can start with the root, the core of the verb, and then you can add different morphemes, affixes, and that communicate different aspects of information. It's designed to be useful for students. And then you have different outputs at the bottom, which is tied directly into the text-to-speech, and so then it speaks it. And so this is kind of generated on the fly. We're using a video right now because tech is tech. But this is kind of a faithful reproduction of how it works. So again, we can do that with Tina, Robo Tina, which will sound a lot like Tina. So this is just a little video of yeah, and so you can kind of select, add affixes, and then you get an output at the bottom, and then you can can speak. And so then that's the conjugator. And so the text to speech is kind of a more powerful model. You can put anything in standard Roman orthography and it will speak it. So danse kakiao robot Tina. So hi everybody, robot Tina is what I'm called.
Danse kahkio upotina nitsihasun.
And similar with Wayne. And we tried many different models of how to actually build this. I'll let Wayne speak first.
Danse kahkio upotwen nitsihasun.
So one of the issues, as I mentioned before, is regional variation ended up being fairly important. There's a lot of variation in a very small area. And so we found that the best way to faithfully reproduce it was to just make models that sounded very similar to the speakers. And so there's kind of a base layer that has kind of a mixed model, and then a surface layer that has individual speaker, like it's very heavy on individual speaker data. So yeah, some issues is regional differences in the audio. Obviously, there's concerns with ethics protocols, potential harms, and benefits. Tina, maybe you can talk a bit on this. I've got some points that I wanted to say, but I want to let you speak to this.
Okay, so some of the regional, so for me, this is a personal journey for me because I'm not comfortable with leaving my voice out there. But my focus is language so much. There's so many in our communities that when they go home from class here, they don't have that person to speak to, and to be able to have an audio of, of a fluent speaker. And for me, I know the other presenter said something about you don't have to be perfect. I think with our language, with our Nihiawiwan, you have to have a really good translator because there's so many of our words that are written almost the same and can sound the same, but just a slight intonation can mean completely something else. So if you're teaching it and the student does not know what is the right word, you're teaching something completely wrong. So they sound similar, they're spelt the same. The only thing is they have the little macron on a different A. And that's all there is. And if you take that spelling and put it onto this text to speech, and you're thinking you're saying nianan, us, and actually you're saying nianan, then you're going to have the wrong thing. And that's one of the things I'm really concerned about is right now. And just to be upfront, we started this with ceremony, with Aiden. We all started it with ceremony, with the pipe ceremony. We haven't finished the ending yet, and we're trying to get our schedules to set up. But and right now it's not public. And a lot of this is because a lot of the concerns about the ethics and the AI and the potential harms that could come to it. Whether we put it public or not, I don't know. I think there should be a law, something in place about AI. I firmly believe there should be something in place for that no one can just come in and I mean, I know Amazon, they published a book all on I don't know if it was Indigenous language, all on AI, and was so wrong. It was so completely wrong. So we need to do something about stuff like that happening, I feel. For me personally, I had a really hard time because there's so little of me that I didn't want to leave my voice out there. But when this came up, I thought, okay, you know, I don't, there's a lot of things that Tina, the real Tina would not say. But if it's learning the language, yeah. If they make me swear, which in the language, in our language, we don't have swear words. It's that intonation in within a sentence that makes it a curse. But with our language, it's actually just body parts, right? But this text to speech, it doesn't have that or intonation or tone. in it. So, but I'm excited about it because it will help our communities with so many of students going home, or even adults. As adults, there's not so many of us fluent speakers around now. And so, yeah, but it's something, there's the yin and yang, you have your good and your bad, and it depends on what you want for this. Yeah, I hope, I'll go to you, Ross.
Yeah, sure. So, I guess for me and some questions we've been having is, as Tina alluded to, there's still questions and discussions on how public, I guess, we want this to be. It's a bit of a paradox too, because for revitalization, we want the language to be in as many domains as possible, right? We want it to occupy more niches, more habitats, right? And this helps. This kind of technology absolutely helps. Access to fluent speakers is not guaranteed for learners. There's a lot of places where the language used to be very robust and it's not anymore. And so something like this is really helpful. But then it comes with an issue, is that, well, even though in this particular model, there's more individual variation or regional variation in the speech, it's still kind of low entropy, like it's flat, it's not individual. It fundamentally, it's still a model. It's not communicating nuance or anything. And so, yes, I think it can help to bridge the gap from a state of language loss, but it leaves a lot of questions about what the future is going to look like. And then even this usage runs a bit of a risk of erasing voices. So it's this kind of struggle, I guess, between, well, we want to revitalize our languages. We're making great progress in doing it, but again, fluent speakers aren't really guaranteed. And so using, someone like Robot Tina or Robot Wayne or Robot Sue, it's not using their voice, even though it sounds like them. Everyone's given permission and their blessing for using this, and everyone's really, really supportive. But, if we use it to tell a story, it's not that person's story. The prosody, the inflections, the intonation, the rate of speech, everything, in the text-to-speech model, it doesn't communicate their worldview or their experience in the context. And so it's another, even though this is a speaker, the speaker has been given the recordings, when we use the voice, it's not the speaker's voice. And so these kind of questions are really important, I think. I mean, intellectual property aside, the community owns it. It's kind of at the behest of the community. It's with community. It's for the benefit of the community, but there's still these questions when we use this technology. Here's some quotes from some of the speakers that gave us recordings for it. And so Louis says, you're not hearing true sounds, but yet it's true. This is all around good Cree. And Wayne says, it's a good tool, but I'm concerned that it can be misused. Sue says, I liked it. It's really interesting to see what can be done. Kevin feels that it motivates the young ones and adults to learn Cree, falling in love with the technology. That's definitely something we've seen. And Carl says it's the beginning of a good tool that can become bigger or larger and grow into something bigger. Overall good, though some words are not as I would pronounce it. And then again with students, some of the students expressing the ethics around the topic. They want to learn more, interested in using the program for their studies. Again, very important. Instructors are hard to come by. Fluent speakers are sometimes hard to come by, and their time is limited. And so helping with students is really significant. And then another student says, it's like having our teacher around. It's fluent, but there's also dangers. So want to thank everybody for listening. It's a couple talks that we gave. If you're interested in some of the technology, you can look at our paper in computer speech and language. And there's some more information on the NRC end of these projects.
Thank you so much. That's really interesting to hear about this initiative, again, text-to-speech model for revitalization of Cree. Many thanks for taking us through the profiling and of the training data you used, and also the dialect variation and regional variation, which is a real challenge to you and also to many languages alike. But what I liked most here is showcasing how it works, and also coming with some reception or feedback from students and users as well, which is great. Thank you so much. We now move on to Dr. Maya, researcher at Meta Fundamental AI Research Lab in the USA. And he is going to speak to us about open resource AI for a linguistically diverse world. The floor to you.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen.
So I'm going to invite our next speaker, Mr. Palagin, COO of Nations Translation Group from Canada, who is going to talk to us about why imperfections matter, the human touch in the AI era. The floor to you, please.
Thank you so much, Professor El-Farhati. I'm truly honored to be among this group of experts and professionals. This is my first time being here. I'll just simply introduce myself before sharing my screen. I'm André Pellegin, the CEO of Nations Translation Group. We're a group of language service providers based in Canada. I wear different hats. I'm as well the vice president of the Canadian Language Industry Association, so involved so much into the language industry. I as well sit on the technical committee at the Canadian Standard Board for the translation and for the ESG standard. So just to give you a little bit of background where my presentation will be led. So allow me to share my screen. So really, if I want to summarize our topic today, it would be authenticity. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of AI. I'll just speak a little bit about what we did at Nations. We're a company that invested so much into transformation technology that we do believe there are pillars for languages and for authenticity of data. Nations is a Canadian leader as a language service provider. We get an award as a game changer in 2024. We're a top 100 global company, 100% Indigenous owned by a Mi'kmaq community and Little Red River Cree Nation. We're a strategic ESG partner in our community. We partner with 60 or over 60 Indigenous communities across Canada. We share the same vision, preserving and promoting Indigenous languages, but as well, we had started an initiative on fostering new generation of Indigenous speakers. So AI is no longer just as a tool. It's a foundational element that is used across different industries and different practices, from finance, healthcare, manufacturing, translation, and so on. I'm not going to speak about the benefits, but there's some reason why private sector and governments are so much interested into AI. It's speed, scale, automation, but almost ultimately it's cost saving. Yet we lack a lot of understanding the nuances and the accuracy of the information, which should not be compromised. And this is where I take this as where Nations has invested in technology, part of its language preservation mission. Certainly developing digital dictionaries, translation memories, creating terminology databases. And just to give you a little bit of picture, we're a company that exists since 33 years ago, and we process tens of millions of words every year. So we have trillions of data segments that we were able to use into training our AI engines and LLMs to perform. So what I'm sharing with you is really based on heavy experience on how we've dealt with that. Creating multimedia learning tools is an amazing, fantastic tool for people to learn Indigenous language, especially if they are in communities, but they don't speak that language. AI and natural language processing, I'm really impressed by a lot of the presenters today, and I'm inspired by many as well. Documenting, archiving, distributing that, sharing it with Indigenous communities, really with the younger generation would become the new generation of Indigenous speakers. Now, taking it to the AI, it has its strength, which I'm not going to focus too much because we've discussed that during the other presentations. and we know the benefits of it, but it has also its limitation. Limitations really comes into the nuances, the context that it could be struggling with, the errors of terminology, cultural adaptation. If I'm talking about AI, also not just in translation, but if we speak about AI in interpretation and natural language processing, I always say it's not what you say, is how you say it. And I've looked at different AI engines. When you hear the natural voice, I mean, unless we change the way that we communicate and we discuss, the message is delivered differently. And there's a way. So I could be saying something and it's auto-translated by AI, but it's not actually bring the emotions that I'm having. So the trust equation in this matter, no doubt it's a tremendous tool. Our team, they really tripled productivity. I also believe it has, transformed the translation industry. I don't believe today our translators are performing the basic translation skills that they had, but they're more as language auditors as these AI engines and LLMs are being trained and being more accurate, and they're going to continue to do so. But they cannot just bring that authenticity alone. It still requires the education, the knowledge of how to, put sentences together. I will talk about that in the next slide. But accuracy is very, very important. Clarity on grammar and vocabs and structures, the styles, cultural relevance. This is something that, yes, I can prompt the engine, but if I don't have the knowledge and the education and the expertise, how will I bring that? And at the end, it's the expert validation. I mean, who says that that information is accurate or not? Just to give a real world case, happened in 2023. I think maybe many could have heard about that. There are two lawyers in New York that they have presented to the court 6 fictitious case citations that was generated by ChatGPT. For some instance, for them, it was just a case that AI helped them into populating, but at the end, it was harmful, and both they were sanctioned as to perform their lawyers for this misconduct. So AI can hallucinate. I've been in many situations where I use AI every day, but I still have to validate this information. Where trust becomes really the question: how can we trust the output of this amazing tool that helps us every day in many aspects? It requires that human. So linguists, translators, their job is really to refine the clarity, get the structure, the style, the grammar, all these language components and checklists to make sure it's reflecting. Subject matter experts are really the people to validate the accuracy and the compliance of that information. And together they do this, amazing combination of how we can use this tool today to improve our performance, the speed, quality, and all these important KPIs that we've set as human to push further. And I know I've heard in many discussions that a human can adapt to the AI quality and accept it. I'm still solicited every day by different messages delivered on my inbox. From the subject line, from the introduction, I can tell automatically it's a ChatGPT or it's an AI generated text. I'm not engaged. I'm not responding. It's just a waste of time and waste of information. And that takes me to one of the questions that was asked during this session about Wikipedia translation and being accurate and all that. Certainly, people can be misinformed by that, but also cannot be engaging. It can be harmful for branding purposes, for the image. There's a lot of harm behind it. Again, stressing the importance on the human element and the human intelligence to use this tool. And that was just simply my presentation today. I want to thank you. Again, I was truly honored to be here. I'd love to collaborate with many of the presenters. I was inspired by many of them. And I did not put my contact information, but you can find me on Google and everywhere on the internet. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I agree with you. Authenticity is key, and expert validation can add to what the technology is doing. Thank you so much. Without further ado, our last speaker is my dear colleague, Dr. Maradan, who is a lecturer in translation and interpreting at the University of Leeds. He is going to speak to us today about why Indigenous language translation matters and how can AI help. The floor to you, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a huge honor for me to be here, to be sharing ideas with all these amazing colleagues with really impressive research and achievements. Today, my presentation is basically a process of me thinking out loud, because my PhD research is still at its very initial stages. These are the ideas of my PhD studies and also some of some food for thoughts after years of training translators and interpreters. So first of all, just to give you a grander picture here, only 29 languages have over 50 million speakers, and there are over 7,000 languages spoken in the world today. And only 50 languages are identified as well-resourced languages, meaning all the other languages are under-resourced. So this is a huge imbalance between those dominant languages and low-resource languages. So the challenges with low-resource languages are often lack of training data, as many of our colleagues have mentioned today, lack of translators. So I can give you a very personal example from my experience, because in the past I've been contacted by so many companies wanting to translate into Uyghur, my native language. So I get constant requests to translate into these languages, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I am the only searchable professional translator working into Uyghur on LinkedIn, at least. I'm not sure about other spaces, of course, but I do know other professional translators working with Uyghur, but they're not very present on the internet. So there's also a lack of professionalization for translators of under-resourced languages, because professionalization means that you have to be properly trained in those language pairs, given the model of education today. There's lack of training, and of course there's poor working conditions for Indigenous language translators, because while I get many requests for translating Uyghur, usually the payment is abysmal. It's really paying peanuts, so I tend to refuse many job requests. So these are some of the challenges that I find personally faced with translators of low resource languages. So as part of my PhD research, I think it's fair. I think I should first introduce the research that I'm doing. So I'm looking at how to improve machine translation output from English into Uyghur by transferring knowledge from Turkish, because Uyghur is a Turkic language. It's very similar to Turkish, Uzbek, Kazakh, and other Turkic languages. So how I'm looking at how knowledge transfer learning can help improve the quality of Uyghur machine translation output, but also how language annotation can help improve the fluency of Uyghur output. So as part of my research, I did a small experiment translating the same English text into Turkish and Uyghur. So there are two versions of Uyghur output here. One is Google Translate, and one is using the open source resources from No Languages Left Behind. So I just heard a very interesting presentation from Jean Mayer about NNLB, and I happen to be using NNLB as part of my research. So the quality score, as you can see, so English to Uyghur translation, it's 64.5% for NNLB and 77.8% for Google. But comparing the performance of large language models speaking Uyghur just from 2 years ago and today, you can see a massive difference, because 2 years ago when I engaged with ChatGPT for, when I speak Uyghur to ChatGPT, it was not able to produce anything meaningful, but now it's quite impressive what ChatGPT can do in Uyghur. So while the quality score of NNLB is significantly lower than Google at the moment, I believe this will continue to increase with more engagement from researchers all around the world. But this is, of course, only an example of one language. And then if you compare that quality score into Turkish, so Turkish has 94.6% of quality score. So that's, as you can see, Turkish is a well-resourced language, and the quality score is much higher.
I hate to interrupt you, but are you meant to share some slides? Because we can see the slides.
Oh,
I'm
my
sorry.
apologies.
It's my fault
My
as well. I
apologies.
should have
I
asked
completely
you
forgot
earlier.
to share screen.
No problem.
Yes. So, yes, I was here. And then...
Thank you.
Okay. So, and this is, again, me thinking out loud what simple things we can do as language professionals, researchers, or educators. First of all, one of the most important things we can do is to open up our training programs to all languages. I think I can't stress this enough, because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of institutions all over the world training translators and interpreters. But what we see today is that these programs, the vast majority of these programs, focus on dominant languages. And we still view translation in its very in its traditional sense, that, of course, if you cannot speak these languages, you cannot translate these languages. While this is still true, and then while there are still lots of strict requirements for entry into these institutions, many of our training can actually be language agnostic, language independent. For example, we train CAT tools at Leeds, and these CAT tool modules are often language independent. We have a classroom of say 40 students, and these students speak very different languages, but it is still possible to train them in the same room. So if we can think of training programs in a different way, if we can let's say assume that speakers of under-resourced languages already have a good knowledge of these languages, instead of training testing their language ability, we can assess them based on how well they can engage with translation technology and many other aspects. For example, professionalism and their service competence, and etc. So, and then more technological solutions for low resource languages is also very welcome. By this, I mean, for example, in CAT tools, when I use different CAT tools to translate into Uyghur, one problem I face is sometimes some CAT tools don't even have the Uyghur option in their list of languages, which means that I will have to choose, say, Arabic or Urdu, because the Uyghur language uses the Arabic script and it's written from right to left. So I would often have to choose Arabic as the target language to be able to use certain CAT tools. But this is something very simple and something CAT tools can do just to include these languages. By including these languages properly, then you can use machine translation API to help engage with machine translation technology in your professional translation work. And of course, we can work to guarantee working conditions of translators by setting up industry standards, and then build open source terminology database for low resource languages. When I work into Uyghur, one of the main problems is that if I don't have if a certain word is not in my dictionary, then I would really struggle to find the translation of a word. So earlier on, I was translating a text involving birds. So I need to work really hard to find the translation of words such as swallow, magpie, robin, and woodpecker, and etc., etc. So these things take a long time because it's the online resources are just not readily available. So if we can set up open source terminology database where people can contribute terminology, then this makes professional work much easier. And then of course we can work and find out ways to incentivize learning of indigenous languages. And then what AI can do in this regard is that, at least from my experience working with Uyghur, there are lots of books from the past 60 and 70 years in Uyghur that are scanned PDF documents uploaded all over the internet. These books are extremely valuable resources. While of course there are ethical concerns involved here, if we can collaboratively make efforts to develop OCR technologies to scan these PDF documents, then we can have loads of language data readily available to augment the training data. And then there are training language model with limited data can also be faced with many other problems. For example, when we talk about AI and large language models today, it has essentially become a mathematical problem today. So when in the past, when we talk about statistic machine translation, it's a language annotation problem, but now large language models are mathematical problems. It doesn't mean that language annotation should be phased out, especially for low resource languages. Language annotation can still play a very important role. And then, as I mentioned, transferring knowledge from a cousin language can also really help to improve the quality. But of course, we need to think of ways to reduce noise, reduce calc and whatnot. But again, knowledge transfer can be a very powerful tool. So in short, I think preserving under-resourced languages using AI is a really important task, and only 36% of the world population speak a dominant language. So preserving under-resourced languages means serving the rest of 64% of the world population, and preserving local knowledge, culture, heritage, and history, and so on. So this is really important work, and there are many things AI can do. So instead of seeing AI as a threat, which a lot of people think is the truth, because AI is posing a threat to translators, I see AI as also an opportunity and tool. So Rahmat, thank you very much.
Rahmat, Farouk, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your personal experience and insights about your own dear language, Uyghur, and the challenges you face, and also taking us through some solutions. Many thanks. And many thanks again to everyone. I'll open the floor to 2 questions, I was told, because we are running behind a lot. And then I'm sure everyone is tired now. So we want to take 2 questions. And many thanks to those who have taken the time to respond to other questions on the chat here. So that's helpful. So the first question I will take from text is, what should AI or other developers do when a community doesn't want to share their language data, but digital communications and translations are still necessary? a very legitimate question here. Who wanted to answer that or to speak to that? Please. Anyone?
I'll give it a shot in terms of sharing language data. I think one of the key things for us in our experience is that community does have a real edge around uncertainty about the data sovereignty and IP on that. And I guess it's with the AI space and communication is that we know that with the decline in language fluency and a community that's, intermarriages and all aspects are affecting it, the main thing for from this perspective is that building that trust element with communities to be able to they can share the data openly. How we protect the integrity of our data is a key area, not just for the future, but for now, because a lot of that is taken. I think our indigenous languages do suffer a lot in terms of the minority of people able to do this, to work in this space. So I guess there's a lot of trust and there's authenticity in the work that we do, the value that we do look after our languages first and foremost, that they are valued not just by our people, but others who are taking that knowledge and using that knowledge. Where is it sitting? And I guess that's where how do we build that strong link between our communities to be able to release that data openly? Because at the end of the day, who's really benefiting from this? Is this our community, our people, or big corporations are taking that and lifting it and sharing it and using that knowledge without acknowledging in its proper terms? So, and I talk about monetary as a big element. So yeah, that's me contributing.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I can see a hands up from Dr. McDonald. Do you want to speak to that briefly as well, please? Or do you have a
just
comment?
briefly, just reiterating what Dr. Solomon has said, our languages are precious to us. They are representations of who we are in our culture. And many of us who have few language speakers are working hard to protect our language. We're not in a space where we want to release it widely. So the decision on sharing language is ours and ours alone. How we share it, when we share it. When we're ready, then that will be a space where we may be able to look at a time when we could share, but until then, it is up to us. It may be more comfortable and convenient for majority languages to want to have access so that they can communicate easier and better. But we need the space and time first to protect ours, preserve ours first.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll take one more question from YouTube, the YouTube audience. And I was told by Jeanette, there is a QR code on the Q&A document available, so you could add your questions. But another final question from the YouTube audience is to all speakers from A Holland. With all the AI use out there now, I feel its use in languages can help revitalize, I should say, at-risk languages. But is there a viable option for helping to integrate culture into the language experience and use? Who wanted to speak to that?
I guess I can.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ross. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I started to answer it in the chat and then realized that YouTube
Really?
can't
Sorry,
see
I
the
missed
chat.
that.
So yeah. Yeah, I guess my perspective on this one is at a minimum, any AI model at some level does already kind of encode culture, only kind of. We can't ever really separate language and culture, right? But there's definitely a lot of issues that go with it, both in the technology itself and the use and implementation and the context around which we use the technology. One maybe small example, it's not a small example, but one piece of the puzzle, I guess, is the idea of epistemicide. The erasure of worldviews or the erasure of knowledge through things like translation. So sometimes translation choices, and this isn't specific to AI, happens with human translation as well. But sometimes translation choices can erase the worldviews, usually of a less dominant group, to the privilege of the worldview of the dominant group, right? And with AI specifically, this is a really difficult struggle because it's just a statistical mapping of one concept onto another. There's no human choice being made there. And so that kind of thing can happen really, really easily, right? And so it's something I think it's a difficult ongoing struggle for those types of issues. I think usage of AI is another really important thing that we need to consider. It can be ethical, it can be culturally informed, or it might not be. It really depends on who is using it and how it's being used. For me, I think maybe a large issue here is that culture is personal, as well as being carried by communities or by groups, right? It's collective as well as being individual. And culture is also dynamic. It happens in the moment. It happens from these like moment to moment choices we make from our own personal context or the context of the relationships that we're in, right? And AI isn't really any of these things. It can statistically reflect culture, but it can't do culture. Because I think culture is not necessarily just a thing, it's a doing, right? So it doesn't really do culture. It doesn't really actively participate in culture as an agent in the same way that humans can. And so I think there's not like it's a really rich question, and there's so many ways to think about it. But I think it's like an ongoing thing, right?
Yeah, thank you so much. I know there are more hands up to speak to that question, and really I wanted to take everyone's contribution, but because of the timeline, I wanted to say a final thank you to all our speakers in this last third panel and themes around ethical issues. Thank you so much for all the projects you have presented, all the initiatives, and many thanks from me I am really privileged and happy to take part in the whole event on the International Translation Day, but also in this theme and panel in particular. So thank you so much once again. Back to you, Jeanette.
Thank you, Hanem, and thank you to all the speakers. Closing today's celebration is Mr. Tex Texin, Globalization Architect and Board of Directors in Translation Commons in the US. Tex?
Thank you, Jeanette, and hello, everyone. I promise not to speak very long. I do want to remark what an amazing event. I enjoyed the panel and the studies, and I learned quite a bit. I have several takeaways from the many speakers. There were so many, I can't mention them all, but I would like to touch on a couple. If our audience would like to add their takeaways that were significant to them, they can add them in the question and answer doc. We will collect them and share them with the speakers and perhaps on our website. What we heard was a wonderful survey of the modern translation landscape. We heard about several challenges for AI in particular, for including content, making the content diverse to capture not just formal speech, but colloquial speech, to cover a large range of topics, not just the traditional ones or the ones used in the Western world. We had a great example of including community through the Livonian speakers and how they were being leveraged and promoting their language use. And this was one way that we could improve accuracy. Sorry about the background noise. Of course, just as I started speaking, some construction and gardening tools started happening. We also heard about including the unheard voices from Ms. Turcona. I thought her talk was interesting. We also had some discussion of accuracy and the challenges there. And I thought Dr. Mullaney's comment was an interesting one, contrasting trying to shoot for perfection versus just having good enough translations to meet basic common needs, such as getting somebody help in an emergency. We learned about the state of the art, and we saw some very nice demos, the one for text-to-speech and for some of the other tools. And we touched on the ethics behind translation and data collection, the need for regulation, the approach to data sovereignty, and several other aspects. This is a tremendously deep subject, which will need more attention going forward. We also had some discussion of futures. We could see where the technology is going. I thought that was interesting, and especially the struggle it strikes me the struggle for authenticity is interesting, especially since the history of technology in printing and writing is a two-way street. It for sure records language, but as it's being used, but also it drives language evolution. And we see this today with emojis and the effect our chats have on punctuation, capitalization, and frankly, it drives me nuts. But now when people speak, we hear them say LOL. Maybe because I'm old school. So anyway, those were a few of the things that I was thinking about, and I'll want to think more about going forward. Let me tell you a couple of other things you need to know about Translation Commons, if we can move to the next slide. Thank you. If you go to our website, and you can see the QR code for it here. Last year, when we did this conference, we produced an amazing document, which were all of the proceedings for that event. So if you go there and look at the menu for last year's ITD event, you can download those proceedings. There are also recordings that are on our YouTube channel, so I will send you there. At some point, once we get a chance to process all of the recordings, you can find this event on our YouTube channel as well. We, Translation Commons, have intentions to create additional events in support of language digitization and cultural diversity. If you are interested in helping with this, let us know via Krista at translationcommons.org and or through our other social media. You'll see a slide listing the media in a few minutes. As you know, we're entirely volunteer-based nonprofit organizations, so our volunteers are very influential. They drive the activities we create, and you can help create events around topics or communities where your interest lies. In addition, several of our experts are speaking about language digitization and related topics at conferences and other events. In fact, a few of us will be at the Unicode technical workshop, technology workshop in November. So you can find out more about there. But also this year, we participated in a number of other events. We're also actively publishing guidelines for how Indigenous communities can bring their language online, and not only in English, but they're being translated in several languages. Go to the resources page of our website and you will find those. Most recently, one that I'm very proud of, that participated in the creation of guidelines for creating fonts for your language. So communities that want to create fonts will be able to do that following those instructions. We also have a terrific engineering team, and they've been working to produce keyboards for Indigenous languages. We have some other language-related tools. I won't go into them here. And we're also partnering with UNESCO. We have several projects that we're helping with them. One of them is the technology roadmap. And You may find our website is being refreshed even as we speak. And so you will find some changes being made there if you haven't been there in a while. We hope it's easier to navigate and that you're able to find whatever you need, and you'll be seeing more and more content up there. So learn more about us from our website, and if you'd like to volunteer, please contact us. I would like to take a few minutes just to thank a number of folks. If we can go to the next slide. So to all of the presenters, what a wonderful job you did. I appreciate all of your content. And on behalf of Translation Commons, I would like to thank you all. And let's go forward. It was a really long list of presenters. I won't read each of your names, and I probably couldn't pronounce some of them. So, but very sincerely, thank you. And next slide. And to my friends on the steering committee, you did a great job in collecting the topics and organizing to have those speakers here for us. And we thank you for that. Next. And behind the scenes, we have a really tremendous workforce back there that enable us to produce this through YouTube and do the marketing for it so that you can hear about it, and all of the other activities that have to happen in order to support this event. So you guys, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we couldn't do this without you. So next. So, and thanks to all of you for attending. If you didn't see any of the sessions, you can view the videos with each of the presenters and contributors on YouTube at some point soon. And there's a QR code on the screen. If you have any feedback, if you want to make some comments, you can use this QR code to go to a very short survey. It's only a few questions, but if you would be good enough to fill it out, it does help us plan the next event. It helps the speakers to have some feedback about how they can be more, can do a better job. And we would appreciate that. And you also see here other ways you can contact us, several of our social media, whether it's on Facebook or X, formerly known as Twitter, or LinkedIn or Instagram. So please get in touch with us. And with that, I think our event has come to a close. However, our work on the International Decade of Indigenous Languages is ongoing. Our work on language digitization and further events like this will continue. With your help, we look forward to continuing this effort and making our progress next year and every year on this date until we can host this event with simultaneous interpretation and transcription in many Indigenous languages. Thank you all for attending and for your support. Thanks, everyone.